On behalf of the Neev community, welcome to the Lit Fest 2018. We see reading as a conversation. Usually it is a conversation between you and the book and the author that you might not meet. So this Lit Fest is a special event because it celebrates not just reading, but it celebrates the conversations that we have with books, with authors, with our thinking together. So with the interactive sessions, we use language to understand and to shape and reshape our ideas of the world. So welcome once again to the interactive sessions.
Thank you, Dr. Aloha. I now welcome Abhinav of grade 9 and Noor of grade 8. They have a small writing for you, so it's a welcome note. And they're also going to talk about how books have helped them grow up as individuals.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Neev Literature Festival. My name is Noor.
And my name's Abhinav. As a child, I've always been around books. Despite the fact that neither of my parents are avid readers, they still somehow understood the significance of reading, how it affects the clarity of thought and creativity of an individual, and they proved this by providing me with a range of different books to read from, each in their own way, unique in their own ways. Personally, my reading journey only truly began when I turned 6. From there, my cycle of reading books has truly never stopped.
Dr. Seuss once said, "The more that you read, the more things you will know."
Range of different worlds. Beautiful and highly imaginative worlds where people have personal robots, societies on the verge of collapse where people are living around corruption, decay and fear, and the society around us, the real world, amidst all its complexities and beauties. And the vibrant creativity visible in great books provides us readers with new perspectives every time, a new way of looking at our world. And according to me, there are little to no other ways of exploring these wonderful things other than in books.
Reading creates a world that revolves around us, our stories. This world inspires us as writers, readers, speakers, artists, and most importantly, learners. We need to feel less lonely, to feel more connected to the greater reality of what is happening, or is happening, or may even happen outside of our direct experience.
Books have helped me think more creatively with their unique uses of language and literary devices. My purpose in reading a book, however, has changed for me over the years. At first, my reason to read was largely for a source of entertainment, a way of passing my time. As time passed, however, my reason to read was to understand the lives of the successful people in our world through autobiographies. And yet, this purpose is still continuously changing, as it rightly should. Books have helped me pass time by using my free time productively. They've helped me think more critically about the world around us, help me ponder the meaning of life, the purpose of existence, and the issues in our society. Without books, I certainly wouldn't be the person I am today.
We need to discover the consequences of actions without bearing any of them. We read because we love the language, the image it evokes, the landscape it conjures. We need to know that there's someone out there who has a life like our very own, or not like ours at all. We need to understand where we have come from and where we are going. Many people believe we read because we are human, but I believe we are human because we love to read and read to love. Thank you, and once again, welcome to the Neev.
Thank you so much, Noor. Thank you so much, Abhinav. I have a quick questions for you that I want to ask you guys before we start our session for today. So the first one being, how many of you have fallen asleep and drooled over a book?
Me.
Awesome. Alright, so my second question. How many of you have made mustaches and crazy doodles over the book you've read? Okay, so I'm not insane, so I do that too. Great. How many of you have stopped a book halfway through and never went back to it because you could not connect with the author?
Me.
Beautiful. And my last question, okay, is how many of you wanted the life of a character from the book you read and you've been dreaming to live that life? So that makes sense. So I know I'm not going crazy because I also had the same feeling. So with that kind of a feeling, I would hand it over to Vaishali and group. They're going to introduce to our first author. Feel free to ask questions. I know you've got tons of questions in your head that you want to talk to them, you want to interact with them. Always be open to questions, and welcome to the Neev Literature Festival.
Something fun is what we're going to start the day with. Am I audible? Yes. Great. So we have devised this chant for the day, which we are going to bring in every now and then. And we need your cooperation and participation in making the chant really successful. Are we in? Everyone saying yes? Yes. Thank you. So it goes like this. We do it for you and then we are going to do it with you. Give me an N. N. Give me an E. No. Give me an L. L. Give me an F. F. What do we have? Neev. What do we have? Neev. Where are we now? Neev. What do we love? Neev. One last time. Neev. Thank you.
My session simply said lucky girl and shy super girl. So I was a little bewildered. I was not sure about what to talk about. And then I figured I would tell you about the one moment that pushed me into becoming a writer for children. Because for 10 years, as you all know, I was a journalist. And then my 3 daughters came along. And I spent a lot of time mashing doodies and carrots and shoving food into little kids' mouths and getting very, very bored and pained and talking to mummies about how many times did they potty today and how many times did they pee today, and it had become a horrible obsession. So for a long time, what I've loved more than anything else in the world is books. And more than cupcakes, more than ice cream, more than traveling, more than movies, just books. And today my children sometimes tell me when they're in a grouchy mood, and I'm in a grouchy mood, Mummy, we think you like books more than you like us. And if you promise not to tell them, there are days when it's very true. So, anyway, so I was this grumpy stay-at-home mummy, and one day I decided I am going to write a book. But major problem, every time I sat down to write, everything I wrote came out like one long newspaper article. So it wasn't working. And then one day, my older daughter Alia, who like all 4 and 5-year-olds wanted to wear a pink tutu and do ballet and destroy her feet forever, joined a ballet class. And in Mumbai, we had this ballet class run by these 2 very strict and imperious Parsi ladies. And they were terrifying to deal with. I mean, they were bad enough with the children, but I cannot tell you what they were like with the mothers. So every 4 months, the mothers were all rounded up and called for a meeting with a capital M. And then at the meeting, we were all told about how badly behaved and disgraceful with a capital D our children were. So we were told things like, they need to use the loo. Yeah, well, they're 5. Okay. They come with chewing gum in their mouth. Okay, sorry. They say there was traffic. Like, okay, we are living in Bombay. Anyway, so we sort of ranged on chairs and told all these things about our kids, and we'd all shiver and quickly lurk out as soon as it was over. Now, in ballet, the bun is a very big deal. So my daughter Alia has very long hair, and I am not gifted at the art of hair, which is why I have short hair. Anyway, so I would struggle over Alia's buns, and on Tuesday evenings I would do nothing but sit at home for that bun. One day we were called and we were told, we are not satisfied with the hair. And then that imperious Parsi finger went like this over all the 50, 70 children, and then it stopped at Alia. And it said, Alia, come here. And they put Alia on a chair right in the middle of the room, and they said, we will see what is wrong with this bun. And all the mothers, there were about 60 in the room, turned and looked at me, and the look was pitying and also a little sneery, like bad mummy, bad bun mummy. So anyway, so then because Alia had enormous hair, there were lots of pins. There were, I think, 18 pins on that terrible day. And pin by pin, this woman took out Alia's pins like this. And strand by strand, she unraveled the bun while all the mothers looked at me and it was awful. And I was thinking, I'm not in school anymore. Why am I being made to feel like a moron? This is not fair. Anyway, it took about 7-8 minutes for everything to come off. And then finally they lifted Alia's ponytail like this up in the air and said, the problem with this bun is the rubber band. And all the mummies looked at me as if to say, this is a mummy who doesn't know how to buy rubber bands. And I was so upset and angry. I sort of stormed back home thinking, horrible cow, I am going to take my revenge on her. How can I take my revenge on her? I will put her in a book. And I was so furious that I went and charged out there and I banged out a chapter of a book. And the chapter of a book began with, it just came to me. In Cozy Castle, there lived a dragon, a crone, and a joker, a court jester, something like that. And I thought, she is the dragon, and I am going to show her. So I didn't have a story. I didn't have characters. I didn't have anything. I had anger. and from there, I sort of developed these two bad characters first, and then I developed my children, and then I had to figure out what they would fight about, because obviously we've all learned in school and in journalism class and in writing class that, you know, your story needs conflict and then it needs resolution. So what would they fight about? So I kept thinking, what will they fight about? And then I remembered that when I was growing up in my building, there were these 2 Bimli trees in the building. And years later, those trees were cut down. And it really broke my heart, and it broke the heart of the entire neighborhood. So I think I decided to have those Bimli trees as the heart of the conflict and built the story around it. And I wanted to tell all the children in the audience this story because sometimes we sit around waiting for the perfect idea to come. You know, we imagine that an idea will land in our lap, wrapped in pink and white striped paper with a big bow on top, perfect top to bottom. But sometimes ideas come in the strangest ways. And I often tell children in my workshops that they're like butterflies. You know, they come and sit on your fingers or your hand for the tiniest second and they'll vanish. And you will never capture that idea if you don't capture it at that moment. And it could be a fragment. So my second book, Strange Haunting, I was telling my daughters at bedtime about how in school when we particularly hated a teacher, and in those days, we all had to stand up and say, good morning, Mrs. Joshi. And then, still do? And then at the end of the class, we go, good morning, and thank you, Mrs. Joshi. Sort of indicating that we have anything but gratitude in our hearts towards you. and so I was just telling my daughters that. And then something went click in my head, and I just went and wrote down, good morning, Miss Javeri. Good morning, and thank you, Miss Javeri, on the computer. And that was the beginning of a whole new book. And does anybody here have any questions? Yes? My school, there was not that much sense of humor in those days. Okay. Any more questions from the audience? So let me tell you about how Shy Supergirl came about. So, a question? Lovely.
Can you tell us something more about your writing process? Is this something that's bursty? You write like 4 hours suddenly when all these ideas come in, or is this something that you do every day?
See, because I was a journalist, writing for me was a daily bread and butter process. You didn't write, you didn't get your article in the paper, things looked bad in office. You know, I mean, you did not want that to happen. So I'm a very disciplined writer, and of course, people often ask me about writer's block. And yes, I mean, writer's block does sometimes happen, but I don't let it happen to me in the sense that the minute my children get onto the school bus at 7:52, they leave the house. By 7:55, I'm on the computer. I don't have a shower. I don't do anything. I glower at anybody who tries to talk to me. And I write till about 12:31. And I'm determined. And sometimes the ideas don't come, but I write anyway. Even if I delete everything the next day, it doesn't matter. I don't want that feeling that I'm stuck. Because once you get that feeling you're stuck, then to unstick is a hideous thing. So I push and I push and I push, and sometimes ideas come, and sometimes only one sentence out of 2,000 words is useful. It's okay, but it carries on. Any questions?
Where do you get your ideas from? Like, is your stories all like fiction or non-fiction? What do you normally like to write and what do you focus on?
So I love fiction. Being a journalist for 10 years, I feel I did enough non-fiction. I did lots and lots and lots of non-fiction, and that was great. But, you know, the whole business of journalism and writing is that there are lots and lots of rules always, because you're trying to stick to reality. And in a way, fiction gets very exciting because you learn to break the rules that you've lived with all these years. So, okay, in real life, a girl may not be able to leap 3 floors up, or when she looks at a friend, she may not be able to see colors around that girl's head. But in my world, she can. It's my world. And I think sharing your imagination with other people is among the loveliest things one can do. And creating other worlds, like somebody, I think in the other session said, you find magic in books, and I totally agree. So, any questions, anybody?
But why is non-fiction and fiction called fiction and non-fiction?
Okay. So fiction is stories and made up in your head, and imagination and creativity. And non-fiction, you try as far as possible to stick to facts and reality as far as possible. Not all non-fiction is exactly real. And now there is something in the middle called faction, which is half fact and half fiction. So, yeah, okay. Any questions? Any more questions?
Check. Guys, come on. If you don't ask questions, it doesn't become interactive, right? So you've got something boggling in your head, I'm sure. I have tons of questions that I want to ask, but I think I'd leave it up to you.
Does your storybooks connect to your real life?
Definitely. I really wanted to write books set in India because I grew up at a time when all the books I read were set in some pretty English village or in some small American town. So I always grew up wishing that I lived somewhere else, because I believed that magic only happened in the enchanted woods or in the faraway tree or in Mr. Pinkwhistle's house somewhere near London. And I would keep telling my mother, can you take me to England because I want to see magic? And obviously, life is not that simple. And so she would turn around, she'd probably be stirring something on the pot, and she'd say, no, we are not going to England, so you can see magic. So I always felt a little depressed about that. And so it was very important for me to create books full of adventure and magic set in our own cities. So what if they sometimes are grey and traffic clogged or whatever? There's magic and adventure wherever you go. You only have to look for it. So yes, they're all connected with my city and with other Indian cities. And many of the children are children like y'all, and children like my children, and children like the child I used to be. The names are ours, the restaurants they visit are ours, the road names are ours, because I feel it's important to connect in some ways. So yes.
So basically, do you normally like mash up a bunch of real life experiences or just take one real life experience and add a little bit of fiction? Because in that ballerina story you told us, like that ballet class story, in one of your books you have two villains, and there was only one ballet teacher. So how did you come up with the ideas for the other one?
You are absolutely right. And you know, the other villain is a villain from my childhood, not from my daughter's childhood. She really existed, and she was more villainous than you can imagine. And she really made our childhoods a very tricky and scary affair. And we would... but of course I changed things around because her large and extended family still lurks the alleys of Colaba, and I don't want to be sued to death. So I changed her name. I changed a bit. But one day her granddaughter came to me and said, "Was that my Dadi?" And she giggled. So obviously I didn't disguise her so well. But you're right, you know, I mean, I've taken bits and pieces from different places and a lot from my head. But yes, some is a match. See, now Shy Supergirl, for example, there's not a single character from my life. But this character of Nina, a girl, I just wanted a child who is very quiet, very invisible, but very perceptive. The kind of child who is very intelligent but is ignored. You know, I just wanted to give her a face. And she doesn't exist in my life, but kept knocking at my head and saying, "Let me out." So Shy Supergirl is her story.
So, was that mean lady your principal of your school?
She lived in my building.
Then
And,
was she...
My mother spent about at least one day a month getting her glasses repaired and her windows repaired because of the naughty boys who used to play cricket and smash her windows. And it was quite a grim time.
Call me Nivi because I used to eat Nivea cream when I was a baby. Where did you get that idea from?
Just from my head. You know, because because in that chapter, in chapter 2, I write that there are 2 princesses, right? So, but I wanted one of the characters to be called Nivi, but Nivi doesn't mean princess. So I needed her to have another name, which meant princess, but I wanted Nivi to be her nickname. So why? So I thought, why? Okay, she eats Nivea cream. That's okay. Children eat all kinds of things. This is one of the safer ones.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Yeah? Do you only have female protagonists in all your books?
This is a tricky one. Yes. I try very hard to have males. And in fact, I have a nephew, Spandan, and he sometimes says, "Shabnam Faiji, will you now write a book about a boy?" You know, he's a very dedicated and committed fan, but irritated. And you know, in What Maya Saw, I don't know if any of you have read it. It's a book for older kids, so you may not have. I tried really hard for the 3 people who are actually tackling things, that one of them be a boy, but I'm really sorry. The boy turned out to be a little weak and a little flawed and a little cowardly and opted out of the adventure. Now what to do? That's the boy's fault, not mine. I'm so happy. Yeah. You know, and I'm a girl. I have 3 daughters, and one day we were walking on the road, my husband and I, and a neighbor looked at my husband and said, "You're that one man in that house full of women." So in a way, my imaginary world is a house full of women also. So, any questions? Yeah.
Is Pratosh Mukherjee a real salesman?
You know, it's such a tricky one, because in Six Spellmakers of Dorabji Street, my whole aim was to create a situation in which the characters who come, the fairies may not be fairies. Even I didn't know whether they were really magical, whether they were all really magical or some were really magical, or whether they were just, the kids wanted this so badly that the universe sort of conspired to help them. So yes, I think in my mind, Paritosh Mukherjee is really he's really a salesman. Maybe a salesman with a slight mission to help children, maybe. I don't know.
Hi Shabnam, I have a question. So how difficult or easy it is for an adult to write a children's book? Because, yeah.
Live in a house full of children, not difficult.
Okay.
And so I've written a new book called Nimi's Spectabulous School Days. It's part 1 of a 3-part series. And that book wrote itself, because every night when I'm putting my daughters to bed, they would say, "You won't believe it, the boys in our class, they jumped on the new bean bags, and in 6 hours our bean bags were ripped." And so I had my plot for book 2, you know, the great adventure and mystery of who ripped the bean bags. Because in their school it became a big thing and everybody was looking on CCTV. So every night, with every conversation, it gets sorted out for me. Some books are not as easy. You know, What Maya Saw was more difficult because my girls hadn't reached that stage of adolescence and falling in love, or if they have, they've not told me about it. So I had to sort of delve back into my memories. So a lot of it is a mix. And I'm really lucky because all three of mine are readers and they all edit my books and they look at me very pityingly and say, Mummy, One Direction is out. And anyway, don't call it One Direction, call it 1D.
1D.
Please, Mummy, don't be so uncool. So, I have really
That
good
helps.
editors at home.
All right.
Yeah.
So,
No, I also want to.
so basically, how did you get the personality traits of Sarita? Like, there's so much of mashup. Like, there's cartwheeling, and one moment she's loud, the next moment she's quiet, and then how did you get the clothes? How did you get the character design? How did you get all that stuff?
Sarita. You're asking about just Sarita? Okay, so Nivi is a lot like what I used to be as a child. And Sarita was the opposite, the kind of girl I wanted to be. So, I observed those girls very carefully and created Sarita from a lot of my friends, acquaintances, and the girls I admired. So, yeah.
Okay, one last question from me, please. And you'll answer it honestly.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried making pumpkin peel muffins?
No! But I have a friend who has. And when she read the book, she looked very grim and said, if you felt this way about my parenting, why didn't you just tell me? Thank you so much for being a fab audience. Thank you.
So before we start off with the next session, I think we need to kind of stand up. Can you all just stand up for a minute? Let's just kind of relax. Yeah, just maybe if you feel like kicking your legs, but don't kick someone in front of you, but just, move your legs. Okay. And, okay, and you can sit down. Thank you. All right. So before we start off with the next session, we've got a quick thing that our kids want to show you. So let's go.
We request you all to join in. And this is another chant of ours. Read to love, love to read. 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 Love to read. So moving on, a very known artist, but very long ago, before the independence of India, born in Hungary and studied in Paris, she was one of the first Indians who got to study in the art school in Paris. She very proudly said, Europe belongs to Matisse, Picasso, and many others, but India belongs to me. Sadly, we lost her at the tender age of 28, but the duo of Anita Vachratani and Kalyani Ganpati has further immortalized her life and work through the biography of Amrita Shergill, Rebel with a Paintbrush.
Much for that very, very thoughtfully researched introduction. It's not always that someone makes the effort to actually read and find out about the artist before they talk about her. So, Shabnam's is a really tough act to follow, right? Because not just are we not Shabnam, but we're also talking about non-fiction. And non-fiction is kind of like dire and dull and full of facts, right? But I think both Kalyani and I were very sure that we wanted to bring a lot of whimsy and a lot of mischief and a lot of rebelliousness into this book, which is a story of Amrita's life. But it's a lot more because it kind of tries to bring a lot of the magic that happens when an artist is growing up. Because it's not like an artist is an artist like, decided by someone, right? They're all people, we're all like children like you growing up, and experiences that happen to them, the things they see, all of that goes into making the artist. And that's what this book is about, okay? I'll hand it over to Kalyani.
So when Amrita was born, her parents came from two different worlds, Europe and India. And it's not like today, where dad or mom has a business trip and they get on a flight and they're in London in a few hours. people actually had to travel by ship for days or weeks or months to actually get to another place. And Amrita's mother traveled to India where she met Amrita's father. And they had this beautiful baby girl who was born in Budapest,
which is in
and
Hungary.
would grow up to become one of India's most amazing artists. And today as women, as young children, I think even when I was growing up, we were taught you can be whatever you want to be. But back when Amrita was a little girl, I don't think anybody would have said you can be anything you want to be, because it just wasn't heard of.
So Amrita had this amazing life, okay? She was, her mother and father were from 2 different countries, 2 different sides of the globe. We also know it took 15 days to get from one country to the other those days, not like now where in 2 days you're across the world. She was born in Budapest. Then around 7, she traveled in fact, she had her 8th birthday party on the ship to India, okay? She grew up in Shimla for a while, then went to Florence with her mother for a short 6-month period, came back to India, and then her uncle, who was a polymath is not someone who can do maths in different languages. A polymath is someone who's very good at very different things, okay? He kind of looked at her raw talent, so much of it, and said, you know what, she needs to be back in Paris. And so the whole family moved back to Paris, and Amrita studied at the National School of Art, or the L'École des Beaux-Arts in Paris, and she was there for about 4 years, and then she shocked her parents by saying, you know what, I'm done with Europe, I want to go back to India. And her parents said, no, don't go back to India, why would you want to? Because this world of Europe suits you well, why would you want to go back there? And she said, no, I'm looking for inspiration. And what we've tried to do in this book is kind of bring in 5 layers, okay? So there is Amrita's story, there are Amrita's paintings, there are photographs by Amrita's father, who was one of India's first amateur photographers, okay? He bought a camera as far back as 1880. And we've also tried to move in a lot of background stories, like what was happening in not just her world, her personal world, but what was happening in world history at that time. How do geography and history kind of impact people like us, who are little, maybe children, maybe adults, but they do, you know? And we've also gotten Kalyani's illustrations. Kalyani, would you like to show them maybe? I'm just trying to think of what to show. So this book has about 5 layers to it, and it has beautiful illustrations by Kalyani, which are like that, and it also has paintings by Amrita, you know? So, for instance, here, this is Amrita growing up in Budapest, okay, in a world that was full of like animals and cousins and lots of mischief. You know, there was a very, very horrifying war going on at that time in the world. That was World War I. And there was the Spanish flu, which was a flu pandemic, an epidemic which hit the whole world, which actually killed more human beings than the war itself. And Amrita almost died. Okay? But that was all concern for the adults. There were no teams of servants anymore. There was no butter. There was no meat. There were no sweets. All of that was the adults' headache, right? Amrita was growing up in this world, a world which had animals, rabbits, dogs, cats, horses, everything around them. And the other world that Amrita had was the world of colors. That she loved colors. She loved drawing. In fact, anyone who wanted to give her a present knew that they just had to get her a box of colors. But the one thing she hated completely was adults telling her what to do. Does that sound familiar? Yeah? And adults drawing pictures and saying, now here, you color it, because you're no good at drawing. You just do the coloring, right? Let me hand it over to an artist to talk about it now.
Okay, so when Amrita was 6 years old, if I'm not mistaken, she got a gift from a very dear uncle of hers, which was this beautiful blue-bound sketchbook, okay? And Amrita was so excited because she received this gift on Christmas. And she filled it with these, what can I say? I think freehand drawings with crayons. And all of them had these little stories, you know? So they were fairies, and they were elves, and there were magical wedding processions. and she couldn't be taken away from that book, right? And Amrita grew up to be this person who loved to draw. So if she had a teddy bear, the teddy bear went into the journal. If she saw a monkey, the monkey went into the journal. And you know, her parents were, I mean, they always knew she loved to draw, but I think one of the most amazing things they did for her was when they were moving back to India, they actually went to the museum in Paris and they looked at the Mona Lisa for hours and hours before actually taking their ship back to India. And Amrita was, you know, I mean, how many of us would like to have a birthday party on a ship?
And the gift she got was actually on the ship. There were about 4 or 5 kids. Two of them were actually princesses.
Princess of Cooch
Cooch Behar, yeah.
Yeah.
How much more exotic can you get? And the gift she got, can anyone guess what would an 8-year-old get in, say, 1921?
On a ship.
On a ship. From the princesses of Cooch Behar. What? Yes,
Yeah,
tell me. Sorry? Colors, okay. Yes, Rehan. A music box, wow.
What else?
What else could she have got? Yes. A sketchbook. Sorry?
Drawings.
Toys.
Oh,
Toys. All of that would be useful, right? No, she got a bag of elaichis, cardamom.
Yeah.
That's what adults do to you. Just when you're expecting a sketchbook or toys or colors or a music box, here's a packet of elaichi for you. Please do eat it whenever you feel like having candy.
And you're in the middle of the ocean, so it's the only thing I mean, you kind of just have to say thank you, and I'm really going to be happy with this right now.
And also, you can imagine the queen of Cooch Behar saying, oh my goodness, it's her birthday, I have nothing to give her. Here's a bag of elaichi for you. And when she came to, the other thing about Amrita was that she loved writing a diary, okay? Nowadays, journaling is seen as a way of keeping mental health healthy, keeping you mentally well. And here was Amrita, like about 100 years ago, excessively writing her journals and drawing. And there's a time when they moved back from Shimla to Florence and they were put in boarding school. And once a week, their mum would come to meet them. And there's this lovely picture of the Florence section. There is a bookmark. There's a lovely picture of Amrita that she's drawn of herself, which is very tiny in the book. It's a diary entry of a girl standing sadly waiting, wearing a cap and a... this is the Florence section. And I love this because Kalyani's done such a masterful job of showing us the father. In fact, it's interesting because she was 11 and it was her 11th birthday when they were leaving their darling father and going off to Florence. So you have the father and the girls crying, and you have the backdrop of Florence, the beautiful city of Florence, full of art and museums. And then you have the David, which is one of the things they saw, and you have this diary entry. Can you see the tiny yellow diary entry? All as far as that. You have the diary entry of Amrita describing how sad they were and waiting for their mum to come and take them away from this horrible school that they were in. By the way, there was an art teacher there who was terribly boring and terribly strict. And when Amrita grew up and became a famous, slightly famous artist student in Paris, she said, oh, she was my student. And Amrita heard of that and she said, thank goodness I ran away from Florence early. If I had stayed any longer, that lady would have beaten the art out of me. And incidentally, Amrita got thrown out of that school because she did something that the school authorities considered terribly naughty. She drew pictures of naked people, which is not such a bad thing, but, well, those days it was different. Yes, did you have a question? Yes. Okay. And see, Amrita managed to still, become a fun artist, right?
So you shouldn't let him beat the art out of you.
Don't let him beat the art out of you, okay? And so back in that many years ago, it was rare for Indians to go abroad to Europe to study. If they went abroad to study, they usually, you want to pick the next thing? They usually went to study medicine or science or mathematics or law, things like that. It's amazing that Amrita's parents were kind of aware enough to say that we will take our daughter to Paris to study art. To do this for a girl was unusual, to take a girl to Europe to study. To do it for art was even more unusual. Did she study books?
Yeah, she did.
She did study
Amrita
lots of
loved
books.
reading.
Yeah.
She loved reading.
And she loved reading in different languages because you see, she knew Hungarian, she knew French, she knew English. So she was always hopping across different books.
And Amrita did so many different things in her childhood. She learned to play the piano. They learned to sing.
They were good actors.
Yeah, they were good actors. They loved reading. And you know, they used to live in Shimla, so they used to go on these wonderful picnics, like just the girls to the hills. And on one of these picnics, you know, they decided to go to this particular place, and
called Chadwick
Falls. And Amrita said, you know, we need to go this way. And the girls looked at her and said, no, you know, we have to go the other way. And sure enough, they got lost.
Gloriously lost. It started to rain.
Yeah, and Amrita bumped her head somewhere, and she
That's
could
her.
just see stars. And they came back, and she was in such a huff and puff, and she was so angry, and she said, you know, I'm never going to listen to them again or something. But sure enough, they all, you know, set off on their various different adventures. And Paris was just one of these many adventures for her.
And in fact, when she came home, she was exhausted and hurt and bruised. All of them were. And her uncle, who had been the one to push her to be an artist, kind of to recognize her art, the polymath uncle, Uncle Irwin, he's the one who made her a glass of warm lemonade to comfort her. You know? And well, they went all the way to Paris. And for the first time, Amrita, who had been drawing and who'd been with drawing teachers all her life, was able to draw with professional nude models. And that was illuminating for her because for the first time, and you can see Kalyani has drawn these, she could see how arms and legs and muscles and stomachs and thighs actually looked. And that's her teacher, Lucian Simon. Okay? I'm told we have just 5 minutes more, so if please do feel free to ask us questions.
Or do you want us to go ahead?
Do you want us to go on and talk a little more? Yeah. So in Paris, Amrita kind of excelled in what they call the academic style of painting, which is the highly realistic, you know, really beautiful kind of art. And she actually won an award, which was very, very, for this painting called Young Girls. And it was such a prestigious award for the Grand Salon that they call, that she could exhibit 2 paintings there every year without approval from the jury, which was a very big thing for a 21-year-old, you know. But around that time, she was also feeling a little dissatisfied. She was feeling blocked, a bit blocked. You know what an artist's block is, right? Like you can't draw or you can't write. And but she felt, and she was also seeing a lot of Asian art in the museums, and she felt that she wanted to go back to India, okay?
Yeah, and you know, she couldn't just go back. So she wrote these numerous letters to her parents, and they had arguments over letters for a long time because she wanted to come back, and her parents said, what, we've sent you all the way to Paris, and why do you want to come back to India? I mean, what is there in India for you? But Amrita strongly felt that she wanted to come back to India. So she came back, and she was living in Shimla. And, you know, Paris taught her all this wonderful academic art. But she came back, and she started looking at people in the villages around and how poor they were and what they did for a living. And Amrita decided that, you know what, India is not just glorious sunsets and destinations. This is the India I want to show through my paintings. And, you know, she started this, so she painted so differently when she came back to India that she's ended up creating her own new style where she
was influenced in part by folk paintings and ancient paintings of India, the mural arts, the art of Ajanta and Ellora, of the Matancheri Palace in Kerala, Mughal miniature art, Rajasthani miniature art, Basoli miniature painting, and she tried to create her own voice. And as soon as she came back to India, she sent a bunch of her Paris paintings and her new Indian paintings to an exhibition at the Simla Fine Arts Society. And they kept all her Paris ones and sent back the Indian ones. And she got into such a huff. She wrote to them and said, I am a Grand Salon jury member, approved person, and I don't need to exhibit here. Here, keep your prize money, and and that created a big ruffle because, in India, we don't like rebellious, defiant people too much, and that led to a lot of controversy, and that's how Amrita was. She was a bit sort of rebellious.
And yeah, Amrita was very independent. So she and her friend Bharada actually got into a car in Shimla and they drove all the way to Ajanta and Ellora. She explored Ajanta, Ellora caves and they came to Hyderabad, Madurai, Cochin, where she created a lot of art. But the interesting thing was, she later on had this trilogy of paintings, South Indian paintings. And what I found really fascinating was she picked up all these dhotis and all that from the markets here. Yeah. And she took them all the way to Shimla and had models wear them and then drew them there.
So because her uncle Irwin had told her that you must never copy, you must always sketch from real life. So she actually took all the clothes with her. And then in Shimla, there she is sitting in her studio. Can you see the tiny photograph?
South Indian.
Painting this painting. Where she called a lot of people from around her, hired them. And, the fun thing is that it was a different world altogether. And Amrita was obviously from a different kind of family. And so there she is in Kanyakumari, painting on the beach. And if you see this photograph, there's actually a local person hired to hold the canvas while she paints, because there was so much breeze on the beach, okay? And it reminds me of another time when she wanted to paint elephants and she told her uncle, please, can you arrange for some elephants? And there were 3 elephants holding a pose for her while she painted them.
Yeah, and she, so there's a painting Swings, okay? It looks like a Mughal miniature painting because that was what she was so inspired by. And she loved those reds and the greens. And, they are actually all her cousins playing on this swing. Because the women had nothing to do really during the day. So they would all go out into the garden and chat and everything. So there are these numerous photos of all of them doing that. But Amrita is painting.
Amrita is constantly painting, constantly sort of drawing, constantly also thinking. She was also India's first professional woman artist. There had been women painters before, but none of them were seeking to make a living from their art. That's what Amrita was doing. So she is important because not only was she a strong modern painter with a very self-conscious sort of decision to paint in a certain way, but she was also India's first professional woman painter. She was trying to make a living from her art. Her art was selling for as less as 700 rupees and 800 rupees and things like that. Now they sell in crores. But it might also interest you to know that she is a national treasure, one of the 9 national treasures of India. Yes. Yes. Actually, if you look at Western artists, there are so many children's books written about them, right? They kind of demystify the artist. See, greatness is not a monolith. It's not one block. It's made up of tiny, tiny, tiny parts, right? In any artist, Western artist, you can find Van Gogh, you can find Picasso. Everything is taken apart. They are made human. In India, we don't tend to treat our artists as human beings. We tend to treat them as gods or demons, There's nowhere in between. So I wanted to kind of take apart that monolith, say that you don't have to believe that Amrita is a great artist, okay? But I'd like you to know about her life. That was the intent. Thank you, Deepa. Also, thanks to my collaborator, Kalyani. Any other questions? From adults, children, babies? Yes.
Artists are always considered, rebel people.
Yes.
So, when I was in school, drawing was considered like a not so common thing to do.
Absolutely.
And it was also considered not a paying profession.
Yes.
But when you were writing this for children, did you have that thought cross your mind that this
yes.
New professions, new ideas that
It's always because I write so much for children, I'm always conscious of the parent filter or the school filter. And I do know, I'm married to an artist, by the way. I do know, and I am an artist writer myself, I know how hard this life is. And I know that every life is hard. So eventually people will struggle and find their own path. Kalyani is a practicing artist. You can ask her also.
Yeah, I think as an artist, the thing is it's always going to be difficult. I think the most important thing I learned so much from Amrita's work is that if you really love it, you're going to stick to it and you're going to find ways to work around the economic problems that you have.
Like when she went to South India, if I may interrupt you, Kalyani, she managed to really antagonize the Nawab of Hyderabad, who was a collector. You know, his Salarjung museum is there. He was a lovely collector of artifacts, but he had collected paintings by artists whom Amrita did not approve of, okay? This chit of a 22-year-old or 23-year-old did not approve of, and she walked into his gallery, which he was trying to kind of kindly show off to her, and she said, you have all this rubbish? Where are the Van Goghs? Where are the, you know, the Gauguins? What is this nonsense you've collected? If you had money, why did you buy this? And he got so angry, he sent back her paintings that he had shown interest in. You know, and when she writes to her sister that, you know, so I haven't made any great sales, but I've made enough to cover my expenses. So we all kind of cut corners in any kind of life we lead. And artists, as Kalyani is saying, eventually you stick to it and you figure out a way, you know. Yes, Lalita.
Yeah. So while trying to represent Amrita, who is also an artist, and keeping yourself as an artist intact in the process, how much of her work, so basically you had to do renditions of her work, but they had to still be, so how did you work around that?
So we didn't do renditions of her work. In fact, I remember distinctly telling Amrita that I don't want to do any, Anita, sorry, that is anywhere near Amrita's work.
Yeah.
So the one conscious decision that I made for this book is that, so I do watercolors really well and I love it and I know I can take it to the next level. So there is one section, just open the introduction, that is watercolors where we introduce Amrita's life, okay? And that had to be really magical because it talked about how, yes, Amrita's mother used to read these stories to her with peacocks and fairies. So that's the only section that is completely in color. For the other sections, I actually used a medium that I am really pathetic at, which is pencils. And it was a very conscious decision because I knew using something that I really didn't like to use was what would distinguish Amrita's work from mine. And that worked really well. And of course, I do use pencils much better now. But in the book, I think there was, there's always this saying that there's a reason why you can't use a particular medium, and I think this was it.
No, that's not entirely true. It's a wonderfully illustrated book. What was amazing, when I actually kind of interviewed 4 or 5 artists, I asked for briefs from, like a sketch from each of them for this book. And I realized that I responded immediately to Kalyani because she was the only one who kind of made it alluring and yet showed restraint. I wanted Amrita's work to also shine, you know. So that was great. Yes, you have a question? Yes? Yes? Thank you so much. That's the kind of heady praise that can go to an author's head, you know.
Thank you so much, Anita. Thank you.
Who would like to listen about clones and what the clones can do to you, or what you can ask the clones to do? The clones can maybe go to school for you, or drink milk for you. What do you think you want the clones to do for you? Homework, yes, the clones can do it. But imagine if at the end of the day, your parents want to keep the clones instead of you. What will happen then? So these are the kind of stories which Miss Neha has written. Miss Neha is a Mumbai-based children's author and has written 5 books. Apart from writing, Neha does theatre. She has worked in Mumbai as an actor, playwright, producer, and director. She runs her own theatre production company. Neha is a women rights activist for a movement called Why Loiter. Let's talk to Miss Neha and learn how she came with such a fun stories and what is her favorite. And also talk about the new book. I will let her reveal the title of the new book. It's exciting, guys.
So, hi everyone. I'm Neha. And when I was told that I have to do this up close and personal, and I wasn't given any other brief, like what do I have to say exactly, I thought maybe I'll speak a bit about myself, because I do many, many things, and I always feel confused, like, should I be an actor? Should I be a writer? Should I be an activist? And it's usually my mother who's telling me, Beta, you decide one thing, no, whether you want to be an actor, you want to be a writer, you want to like do this activism thing, what do you want to do? So I kind of thought about it for very long, and I thought that, you know, basically, I want to say a lot of things, and I just find different ways to say the things that I want to say. And I find that I can say some things through the medium of theater, I can say some things through the medium of writing, and I can say other things through my activism. So it's like, I don't think that they are different things. I think they are basically just me trying to express myself through different things. So I'll tell you a bit about the play that I'm doing recently, because it's a children's play, and it's called Jhalkari. I don't know if any of you have heard of her. It's a real life character called Jhalkari. Has any of you heard about her? Okay, so there was this real life, really cool woman called Jhalkari Bai, and she was the commander of Rani Lakshmi Bai's women's army. And she was also Rani Lakshmi Bai's look-alike, and she used to stand in as a body double to Rani Lakshmi Bai. And she was a Dalit woman. That means that she belonged to the lower caste. So a lot of people were not happy that Rani Lakshmi Bai has taken her in the army. But Rani Lakshmi Bai was also really like opposed to caste discrimination. So they had a really good bond between the two of them. And eventually, when the British attacked the fort of Jhansi, it was Jhalkari Bai who stood in instead of Rani Lakshmi Bai and confused the British. And the British actually thought that they had captured Rani Lakshmi Bai when it was actually Jhalkari Bai. And Rani Lakshmi Bai could escape the fort and continue fighting against the British for another 3 months. And the British were like totally confused, like, we thought we just killed Rani Lakshmi Bai, so who's this person now? And it was Rani Lakshmi Bai. So that's the play that I'm currently doing. It's called Jhalkari Bai. And it has a lot of sword fighting, and it's got a lot of songs, and it's got a lot of this martial art form from Kerala called Kalaripayattu. So I think that's also a way to tell a story. Like when you tell a story on stage, that's another way of telling a story. And I also write books for children. And for some strange reason, most of my books are about little girls who are trying to do things a little differently. So my latest book is called I Need to Pee. And it's about this little girl. I'll just show you the book. So this is the book. It's called I Need to Pee. And it's about a little girl who always has to go to the toilet. And yeah, it is funny. But it's also very real, I feel. Because not just little girls, but also little boys and grown-up girls and grown-up boys want to pee. And sometimes you don't find a toilet. And then you are, you know, looking for a toilet everywhere, and maybe you have to go pee behind a tree or pee, you know, behind a wall, or try to get into a restaurant and pee in their toilet. So this is what the latest book is all about. And it's also about this little, but the thing about this girl, Rahi, in the book, is that no matter how many times grown-ups tell her that she shouldn't pee so often and she shouldn't drink so much water, she always stands up to the grown-ups and says that, you know, I will drink water whenever I'm thirsty. You can't tell me to not drink water just because I have to pee and just because the government hasn't made enough toilets. So, and she insists that she will drink water and juices and lemonade and whatever she feels like. And then she will, you know, try to find a good toilet for herself, which is safe and clean and which she can use. So that's my latest book. Apart from this, I've written a collection of stories for slightly older kids, which I have co-written, which I find extremely hard to do because I think writing with somebody is a totally different thing. Like writing on your own and writing with somebody else are two different things. So I think only people who can work very well with somebody else on something as personal as writing should do it. And before that, I wrote 2 more books for Karadi Tales. One is called The Wednesday Bazaar, which is again about a little girl who gets lost in a big market and how she finds her mother. And the second one is called Bela Misses Her Train, which is about this little girl who gets lost at a train station and how she finds her parents. So I don't know if any of you have read any of these books. You have? Okay, that's great. So yeah, so that's about me. So you can ask me about my play, which is called Jhalkari, which I just told you about. Or you can ask me about this book, or you can ask me any question that you want to. No questions? Yeah. So I was working for a company that did storytelling for children. And so when I was growing up, I did not have many children's books to read. So I didn't know that there were so many children's books, you know, when I grew up, I didn't know there were so many children's books. So when I started working for this particular company, it's called Pomegranate Workshop, it's in Bombay. And I basically had to select a lot of children's books from their office, and they had this big library with children's books in them. And I had to go and tell those stories to children. So I was doing that for about a year. And I never thought that I would one day write a book for children. And one day I was coming back from the office. And if you've ever been to Bombay, have you been to Bombay? Yes. Okay, some of you have, so you know how crowded it is, right? So I was coming back from the office, I was going to the local train station, and there was just like this sea of people around me. And since I'm short, and everybody was really tall, and I felt like I'll get lost here, and I just thought to myself that if I, as a grown-up, am feeling so lost in a sea of people, what would it be like for a little girl to get lost in a marketplace? So that's how I wrote my first story, which was The Wednesday Bazaar, where this little girl loses her way in the market. So I was still working with that company when I wrote my first book. I did not have access to the kind of books that there are now, but I did read a lot. So I was reading a lot of those abridged classics that you get for kids. And I was, of course, reading a lot of Enid Blyton. And I was reading a lot of, you know, those Russian folk tales that we got. I was also reading a lot of Hindi books because I'm primarily a Hindi-speaking person. So my mother, she used to read all these novels, and I used to kind of like just read those. No, I don't read Kindle at all. I just read like physical books. Yeah. Yes.
How did you come up with the idea of writing this book,
I Need to Pee? Okay. So that's also based on a real life experience. I was attending my cousin's wedding in Bhopal, and I had to come back, and I didn't have a train reservation. Like my ticket didn't get reserved. So I had to take a bus. And from Bhopal to Bombay, it takes 17 hours by bus. And it was an AC bus. And like the girl in this book, I didn't realize that if I drink a lot of water, I'll have to pee a lot. So I kept drinking water, and I kept having to pee, and it was AC, so you know what happens when there's an AC. And so the bus driver stopped twice, where everybody else got to pee, and I also got to pee. But then in the middle of the night, at about 1 o'clock, I again had to pee, and everybody was sleeping, and I knew that I can't sleep if I don't pee. So I went to the bus driver, and I said, can you stop the bus? I have to go to the toilet. So he kept saying, yeah, half an hour, half an hour, half an hour. And then finally, I had to say to him, if you don't stop the bus, I'll pee on you. So he thought I was serious. And so finally, he stopped the bus, and I got off the bus. And of course, it was the middle of nowhere, so there was no toilet. So I was like, where do I pee? So I tried to pee on the side of the bus, but then these men were staring from the bus at me, so I couldn't pee there. So then I found this little shed, and it was open. So I went inside. It was a potter's shed, and there were lots of pots there. So I peed in one of the pots. And I felt really bad for the potter, because he was going to come the next day and have this pot with some suspicious liquid in it. So I thought that, oh my God, like, I think of myself as a very confident adult, and I had such a horrible time trying to find a toilet or trying to pee. So what it must be like for a young person to, say that she wants to go to the toilet and, find me a toilet. Because a lot of times, I think a lot of girls feel shy or embarrassed to say that they want to go to the toilet. Like one of the girls, when I was doing this book, she told me in class that she was on a plane ride, and even though planes have toilet, she didn't pee for 18 hours, because when she would be walking the aisle to go to the toilet, everybody would know that she's going to the toilet. So she was so embarrassed of that she didn't go for 18 hours. And then when she finally went to her hotel room and peed, it was burning so much. So, so basically I want everybody to be like this girl who doesn't feel shy or embarrassed about such a basic need. Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah. Yeah. So actually my co-author and I, we went back and forth on a lot of titles, and we finally named it Moongphali. Does anybody understand what Moongphali means? Yes, peanuts, right? So there is no story. There are 8 stories in the book, and there is no story that's about Moongphali. Okay? But we still called it Moongphali, even though it's a book in English, and Moongphali is a Hindi word. Because one, I think Moongphali is something that's an equalizer. Like anybody can buy it, and a lot of people love it. And it's available in North India, South India, West, East, and people make different kinds of things with Moongphali. Like, can you all tell me some of the things that you make with Moongphali in it? The kids? Yes? Salad, yes. Yes? Laddus? Anything else with Moongphali in it? Yes. Lemon rice? Chikki? Yes. Yeah, so we make a lot of stuff with Moongphali in it. Yes? What? Chocolate. Yes, chocolate. And is Moongphali very expensive? No, it's quite cheap, right? It's quite cheap, but everybody loves it. Yeah, and it's also very nutritious. It's healthy. And also, each peanut is not the same size. They're all different shapes and sizes. So even in this book, Moongphali, there are children of all different shapes and sizes from across India. And some are poor, some are rich, some are Muslim, some are Hindu, some are, they're of different castes and religions. So that's why we call it Moongphali. Yeah, because it went with the nature of the stories. Yeah. It doesn't work. Yeah. Yes. So I have to confess that I cannot write with anybody else because it's such a personal journey, it's such a personal vision that you cannot write one story with another author. Okay? Unless I don't know, maybe I don't know what it takes to do that. But here we were very clear that we'd write 4 stories each. So I wrote 4 stories, my co-author wrote 4 stories, and we got them together. Yeah. Anybody wants to know about the play, Jhalkari? Yeah. What all processes? Procedures. Okay. So I had no idea because I was doing theater and I had no writer friends actually. So I just went on Google and I just found out the emails of all the publishers that published children's books in India, and I just mailed all of them. I wrote a cover page which talked about me, and then I just attached the entire manuscript with the mail, and that's it. So I remember the first book, The Wednesday Bazaar, I sent it to about 8 publishers, and I got a response only from 1. And they finally published my book after 1 year. Yeah. So I'm very fascinated with the women who have been part of our freedom struggle, because I think except for maybe Rani Lakshmi Bai, we don't know much about any of the other women that participated. And also I think it's so important for young girls to have these kind of role models, or women from our own history that have done something brave or different or unique, to be inspired and to be like them. So I was Googling like a lot of women who were part of the freedom struggle, and Jhalkari Bai was a name that was popping up again and again. So then we went to Jhansi and we met a lot of historians. We went to the fort, we went to the Rani Lakshmi Bai Museum, and we read a lot of books. And then we actually found out that she's actually a very well-known figure, and it's just that we don't know about her. So I thought that she's something that at least school children should know about, because I think a lot of you must be doing the revolt of 1857 in school. Are you reading about that in school? So when we do our play, Jhalkari Bai, a lot of students come up later and say that, when I was reading about this in school, and I was thinking, okay, so they did what they did, why do I have to know about it? And why do I have to learn up all these dates and names? And why are they making my life so tough? But when I watch the play, I feel like, oh my God, they did so much for us. And we just have to remember their name and date, and that's all. They actually laid down their lives for us. So it's a very different thing when you see it live on stage and when you just read about it. Yeah. So we did an adaptation of Roald Dahl's James and the Giant Peach, where I was playing the earthworm, the blind earthworm. And yeah? Yeah. So I'm an actor. I'll do anything. As long as the script is good. I mean, it doesn't matter what the genre is. I do a lot of comedy. I do a lot of musicals. And yeah. Yeah. No, so I live in Bombay. So I do my theatre in Bombay, but we also travel across. In fact, we are performing at Rang Shankara Festival on 29th October. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miss Neha. Before we start off with the next session, Thank you so much for that. I hope you're all feeling better now. Let's go on with our next session. Quite interesting character, quite an interesting person to talk about. If you love stories, then this is the place. If you love reading, then this is the place. If you want books to fill you up, then this definitely is the place for you. Well, amongst us is a special person who feels suffocated if she does not write. She loves and lives writing, which pushes her to write 2 hours a day. And her strategies of 30 seconds writing to spark an idea were quite unique, and it does work, and you should all try it at some point of time. Her books on domestic violence and social issues inspire kids to stand up and voice out their opinions whenever they can. And I hope she continues to doing the same and inspire us all with her books. So enough of my talking, over to Miss Paro Anand, and she would do the honors.
Thank you. This is a crazy book. It's called A Very Naughty Bear. And the first story was something that I'd written a long time ago. It was published by Pratham. And finally, then I put that one story onto Creative Commons, which means that anybody can access it and do whatever you want with it. So it's translated into many languages in India and abroad. It's been performed, it's been extracted, and all kinds of things are done with it. It's like free to use. You don't pay per view kind of thing. But then when I did a performance of this story in Bhutan at the Mountain Echoes Festival there, I made a very dear friend called Madam Kunzang, and Madam Kunzang and I would write to each other furiously, emailing back and forth from between Delhi and the village in Bhutan where she lives, quite near Paro, because as you know that there is a place in Bhutan called Paro, so I really belong there. And then there was suddenly a long gap, and Kunzang wasn't replying to me anymore. No emails were coming, so I was writing saying, Kunzang, where are you, what's happening? And finally she wrote back and said, I'm so sorry, I haven't been in touch, but there's been this bear which came and destroyed all the honeycombs of the village, so like it's been a terrible mess and all of that. So I thought, oh, that's fun. Then again, another long gap later, she said, I'm sorry, I haven't written. A bear came and ate up all the apples in the village, and there's been a lot of trouble, and the villagers and everybody is really upset, and we're trying to find a solution. I said, you know, this is definitely a story waiting to happen, bear and bear and bear. So I said, we have to do a story together. Eventually, we couldn't do the writing of it together, and she said, look, just go ahead and you write the stories. So I did, and the crazier, even crazier, because this is really a surprise bear which pops up in all kinds of odd situations. I was at a bookstore in Delhi last week, exactly a week ago on Saturday, and I was launching my book called The Other, which is a serious, dark book. And everybody was leaving the launch of that book and that reading feeling really sad and dark, and which is an important book, and I'm not going to run it down or anything. I love that book. And Shantanu, who is the publisher, was also there at the launch of The Other. And I asked him, when is the Bear book coming? And he said, soon, I've got advance copies, it'll be here soon. And then he walked down the stairs to where the bookstore part was, and he came running back. He said, guess what, the book is here. So the Bear made a surprise entrance. And then we wrote to Kavita and said, since the Bear has made this surprise appearance suddenly, can we do a launch here? And she, of course, she's always up for everything, and she said, sure, let's do it. So here we are, launching A Very Naughty Bear. Shantanu, come out. So here it is, A Very Naughty Bear. And there are 3 stories here. 3 stories in this. And Shantanu doesn't know it yet. I haven't got his permission to say anything about this. But I'm planning to make this into a series. So there's going to be a very naughty dragon, which is about Komodo dragons. And Komodo dragons. And there's a young, there's a friend of ours, both of ours, whose daughter loves Komodo dragons. She's quite young. She's in class 4. And she says, Paromasi, can we write the book together? So that's what we're going to do. So maybe next year at Neev we'll be doing that. And then I'm thinking of all kinds of animals. And yep. So do you want to hear a bit of a story from this? Yes. Was anybody here yesterday? You were there yesterday. You were there yesterday. Okay. You want to hear the same story or another one? Same, other. Oh no, I shouldn't have asked. This was a mistake. Same, okay. Same. Luckily, it's not shame. Okay. So, Kunzang's bear. High up in the mountains in Bhutan, one village was in turmoil. All the people of the village were very angry. Women were shouting, and how were they shouting? The men had picked up, and they had picked up stones, and all the children were, and all the children's noses were running. Pema and Rinzing went running to find Aum Kunzang, because while she wouldn't be the author, she couldn't escape from being a character. They went to find Aum Kunzang and tell her what a horrible thing had happened. Aum Kunzang was sitting, eyes closed, and she smiled when they came to her. I love the music accompaniment. Rinzin whispered, Aum Kunzang, a very bad thing has happened. Do you know? Kunzang Ange, Kunzang Ange. The shouts were accompanied by running feet. And here comes Garden. Garden is Aum Kunzang's granddaughter. And she came running in. All the villagers are very angry with my bear, Ange. Your bear? Said Pema and Rinzing. Quickly, Garden explained how she had saved the bear before when he had stolen all the honey. That's the other story. So the angry villagers had to be stopped because they wanted to hunt the bear. The ancient forest where the bear lived was dark and not very many people went in there. But what were the villagers angry about? All the apples on the right side of the village had been eaten up and stolen. And they knew that a bear had done it because there were bear paw prints all on the ground. We must kill the bear, said the men. We must, said the women. We must, said the children. Because this was bad news. Well, Madame Kunzang, who was very kind, she didn't want that poor bear to be hunted. So she took her walking stick and she went into the village. Now, of course, in Bhutan, one of the languages that is spoken there is called Dzongkha. Dzongkha. And you're going to need to sing a Dzongkha song. Now, I have to say that I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right at all. I know for sure that I'm a lousy singer, but I'm also, somebody called me a fearless writer, so I'm going to fearlessly sing and mispronounce the whole thing, but you'll need to sing it with me. Okay? Are you ready? You ready? Where are my kids? You ready? All right. So here it is. Madame Kunzang entered the ancient forest, singing her favorite bear song. Ashang Vom, Wed Aunaki, Nad Wed Domdo, Ratta go. Shre Shre Ashangvam. Very good. I'll tell you what it means. Uncle Bear, where are you? I'm coming to meet you. Come, come, Uncle Bear. This part, of course, is co-authored, or well, only authored by Kunzang. So once again, Ashangwam, Wed Au Naki, Nad Wed Domdo, Ratta Go, Shre Shre Ashangwam. Very good. I can tell you the kids were singing better than you guys yesterday. And there, as she entered the ancient forest, Madame Kunzang saw a dark shadow walking towards her. She knew you have to be very respectful to bears. And so she put her stick down and she bent down low and opened both her palms, because that is the proper way of greeting the queen and royalty of Bhutan. You open your palms and bow down to show that you have no weapons hidden on you. The bear came up. She could feel his hot breath on her. She could smell the apples on the bear's breath, so she knew she had come to the right bear. Bear, you have done the villagers a great wrong. They've never harmed you. You've taken so many apples from the right side of the village that they're very angry, because the villagers need the apples. They eat the apples. They dry the apples so that when the snow comes, they have something to eat. And they sell the apples, and with the money, they send their children to school. They feed their cattle and dogs. And they buy warm clothes for the winter. What are they going to do now? So the bear said, "But I was hungry. What should I do?" Well, why don't you do one thing? Take one apple from every tree. Nobody's going to mind if you take just one apple. That would be fine. And the bear agreed. So Madame Kunzang went back. But of course, that's not the end of the story. She told all the villagers, "Put down your sticks, stop your screaming and crying, wipe your noses and go home. The bear is only going to take one apple from every tree, and we're going to allow that." Next morning, when the villagers woke up, they found that all the apples from the left side had been eaten up. There was nothing left. Again, the villagers were mad angry. Again, the men picked up, and they picked up, and the women went, and the children went, and their noses went, shoo, shoo, shoo. Madame Kunzang said, "Stop your shouting, put down your sticks, put down your stones, wipe your noses, stop your crying. I shall go and find out what happened." So off she went, and we know the song again as she walked into the village. Ashangvom, Wed Au Naki, Nad Wed Domdo, Ratta Go, Shre Shre Ashangvom. And there the bear appeared. "Bear, what did you do? Why did you do this? You took all the apples." The bear only gestured for her to follow. She went after him and discovered in the heart of the ancient forest was a huge gathering of bears. "We are so many. We are so hungry. One apple from every tree is not going to fill our stomachs." "Oh," said Madame Kunzang, and she thought a minute, but she was very clever. And so she said, "Why don't you take 3 apples from every tree. Nobody will miss 3 apples, so you can do that. Now we'll have to wait till next year when spring comes and the new apple trees give their fruit again. Before the next spring, she made her way into the forest again to remind the bear of his promise. And he said yes, 3 apples per tree is all he would take. But while the village slept, was sound asleep, nobody saw. When the village woke up next morning, all the apples from the right side of the village and some from the left side were gone. Now there was no stopping the villagers. They were so angry. Everybody was shouting, everybody was screaming, everybody had sticks and stones, and they were determined to break those bears' bones. Wait, wait, said Madam Kunzang. And although they didn't want to wait any longer, they had to, because nobody disobeyed Kunzang. So she went. She found her bear again. And she said, Bear, what happened to you? You promised 3 apples per tree, and then you took all the apples of so many trees. What happened? The bear hung his head down, and big tears plopped onto her feet. What could I do? I don't know how to count. I can't count only till 1. I couldn't count to 3. So I took what I thought was 3. Now, Madam Kunzang, she hadn't thought of that at all. She gathered all the bears of the ancient forest and she led them, and she looked like a strange Pied Piper walking along with her stick, and she entered the village. She entered the village and she went straight to the Neev Academy, where she found a big hall with a big blackboard, and on it she wrote 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 3. And they enjoyed counting to 3 so much that they wanted to count some more. And so Kunzang opened a school specially for bears. And after that, only 3 apples per tree are taken by the bears. And there's one story of the honeycomb, as I mentioned, and there's one story about the bear who wants to climb onto the moon because he wants to be the first bear who's ever done something and wants to be famous for the first bear who ever did what. So he wants to climb onto the moon. So there are lots of stories to read here. Thank you. There are only 3. 3 stories for those 3 apples. Thank you.
Can we have a special chant for Paro, the diva of writing? Are you all with me? Okay. So it goes like this. I'll say, give me a P. You will say P. And so on and so forth. Okay. Give me a P. P. Give me an A. A. Give me an R. R. Give me an O. O. What do you get? Paro. What do you get? Paro. Who do we have? Paro. Who do we love? Paro Anand, thank you so much.
World. While reading a book? To me, reading is what a book makes you feel when you immerse yourself in its pages. A book can take you places you've never been to. Every time I read a book, I'm transported to its setting. I learn about its characters and decide which ones I want to support.
I travel into the world of mythical and whimsical creatures, some helpful and some sly, but all an asset to the story. If there were no antagonists, then how would the superheroes be superheroes? They need to fight the so-called bad characters, and they need to protect their people.
I often wonder how authors visualize characters while they were writing their books. I love mystery and fantasy books. One day, I hope to acquire the skills to be a good author. I want my audience to hold their breath and be at the edge of their seat, intrigued to know more about my story.
It's wonderful how one word can have so much meaning and depth. And each word, each sentence, each paragraph, each chapter makes a difference to the story. And what makes each author different from the others is their writing style.
I think a good author should have a wild imagination. My favorite author is Roald Dahl. His children's books bring a wonderful sense of happiness at the end, with interesting and outrageous characters. And are usually packed with a funny sense of humor, which leaves me in splits. When I'm reading, I relate to different characters and get inspired by others. Reading is not just a hobby for me. It's truly an exploration of people and places, and I keep discovering new treasures with every new book.
I'm sure all of you have this one book or author that you really like because maybe you're able to relate to them. Maybe you admire their style of writing. It all depends on you and your perspective. Reading will always be special to me, and I hope you enjoy it too. We would like to conclude with a quote. Reading is dreaming with open eyes.
We hope the Neev Lit Fest teaches you the simple joy of reading. Have a memorable experience.
Thank you.
Growing up, I grew up to Dr. Seuss saying, the more that you read, the more things you will know. The more that you learn, the more places you will go. Many a times I see people around me, my friends, colleagues, nieces and nephews, who feel like the lost boys of Neverland the moment you ask them about a book. How many of you over here feel that, every time somebody gives you a book, you feel like the lost boys of Neverland? Like, let's have a raise of hands. I know a lot of people in my life who feel like that. Okay. How many of you feel your children feel like the lost boys of Neverland every time you ask them to pick a book? Yeah, it's not that uncommon. But I'm not going to be the one who's going to tell you about this. I'd like to invite an expert, Nadine Bailey, to come and speak about how to help a child, or maybe even an adult, to pick a book and enjoy reading, explore their love of reading. I invite Ms. Nadine Bailey.
Okay, that better? Right, everyone hear me. Okay, this might seem a strange topic for a literature festival. Sure. And how many of you feel slightly guilty or embarrassed or shamed because you keep hearing this love to read and read to love, and we love literature, and books take you on journeys, and books for empathy, and books and books and books and books and books. And you have somebody in your home or in your classroom for whom this does not apply. Okay? Right? I'm gathering this is a self-selecting group. Okay. So it's a really, really hard thing. And at the same time, do you yourself love books and love literature and wish there was some magic, something you could sprinkle on the cereal or over the ice cream? Yeah? Anyone like that? Yes. Okay. So my story is I have two children. I have a daughter who somewhere miraculously around the age of 5, she was just reading. Just happened. Nothing. And I was just finished congratulating myself as a parent for being so wonderful, and obviously all that reading to her had paid off, blah, 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 blah. And my son, who's 18 months younger, when he got to that point, was not reading. And he went past that point, and he was still not reading. And he went past that point, and he was still not reading. And he didn't mind me reading to him, but there was no way that he wanted to read for himself. And that started my journey into this whole question of when a child doesn't want to read. And it's a very, very complicated story. Children generally want to please their parents. Of course, they all have their moments, but at the bottom, they really want to please you, but sometimes things are really hard to them. So, for us, reading is love, and there's a lot of talk about love around here, but for some children, reading is hard work, really, really hard work. And this can be a result of us creating reading as work for them? How many of your children have to do reading tests that will put them on a level? How many of them take part in online reading programs where number gets put on their reading? Yeah? Okay, how many of them feel badly when they don't hit a number or they're told they're being lazy? How often do your children hear this word lazy? Yeah? Lazy? Right. Does anyone know how hard it is to read? Hands. Reading, easy or hard? Depends on the subject. Okay. So actually reading is an incredibly difficult skill. It's something that is not natural. Has anyone read any of the works of Marianne Wolfe? Okay. She wrote 2 books. One's called Proust and the Squid, and it's about the neuroscience of learning, of reading, and the other more recent book is called Reader Come Home. And in it she explains that reading is not a natural thing, and it's something that's only developed very recently. And so your brain has to use parts that weren't actually developed for reading, they were developed for other things in order to be able to read. And this is why some children really, really struggle with reading, is because for them it's not easy. So the things that reading take, and these are the things, the really important things that I think we have so little of these days. Time, space, and focus. How many of us really have those 3 things in our life? Yeah, you have time? That is a wonderful thing. Paro earlier on said that as a family, they sat down and read every evening for an hour. How many families today sit down and read together, not on a piece of electronics, for an hour every evening? Anybody? Yes? No? I'm looking. 1. We have a champion here. You should be giving our speech. Okay. So creating the time in our lives for reading is something very special, but for these children it might be a terrible burden. So I was doing a little bit of research on this. In my previous school, I ran a very successful club called Blokes with Books. And the reason for that, we've been talking a lot about gender and sexism here. However, I was finding as a teacher librarian, it was generally young gentlemen who were having problems with reading. So they could do the mechanics, you gave them something to read, they could tell you all the words, but everything in their lives was cooler than sitting down with a book. Playing outside, soccer, running around, playing video games, anything but reading. Reading was not cool. Reading was for the nerds, reading was for the girls, reading was for babies. And so together with a colleague, we started this book, and my colleague was very cool. I was the old lady in the background, and he was this cool guy, a really cool guy, in the front. And we created this book for blokes, for guys. And the idea was to let them have a feeling that just like running around with your friends playing football, reading would be something fun. And we started with 4 or 5 boys, and by the end we had 30 boys and more coming, and more begging to come in. And we made it fun, because who wants to do something boring when you're a young person? Who wants to do something that's terribly serious? So every week they'd meet for around, well, we started off meeting for half an hour, and then they decided to give up half of their lunch time to make it an hour, which for young active boys is quite a thing. And I basically said, nothing's off limits. in the library. So they could run around, they could erect a tent in the library, they could make piles with my books, they could mock books, they could they did this thing called when you do like charades, they could act out books together, make movies about books, anything they could read together. And that's one thing I found was when you think of reading, often you think of solitary reading, but actually children love reading together. How many of you as adults sit down next to somebody and read a book together? Yeah? Same page? With another adult or with a child? Yeah? Reading is a really sociable thing, and we can make it sociable. And when something's sociable, it's so much more fun. And my kids would love to sit down and either both with the same book, turning the page at the same time, or in the same book and pointing and exclaiming and then running to get another book. And it becomes such fun. And then as an ancillary to that, I was secretly tracking their reading scores on their reading tests, and they outperformed their peers. They outperformed the girls, which was quite embarrassing for the girls. They were the people who didn't have the summer slide. And that made reading so much more fun. Another one thing I want to talk about is a little bit about taking life to text. Any soccer fans here? Children who are soccer fans? Yeah? Okay. So just to give a little example of something that could work. You have a child who does not want to read at all, but they are a soccer fan. Taking real life, going to a soccer match together, using the vocabulary of soccer, because sometimes issues are with vocabulary, we just don't know the words. Bringing back those words and looking at that soccer match in the newspaper later and repeating those words of that newspaper. Okay, that's a very small step, so very, very small incremental steps. Watching a match on TV, then perhaps going forward, you're going to look at a non-fiction book together or a soccer magazine together with lots of images, very few words. And then the next step might be a small chapter book. Again, looking at soccer, but then not forcing reading, but you reading to them or co-reading. One thing that did help with my son was we started off, you read a word, I read a word. You read a word, I read a word. Or you just read all the ands and all the those. And I read everything else. And then we built it up, sentence by sentence, paragraph by paragraph, page by page, until, and then, I mean, it was a negotiation every time. Okay, I'll read 2 pages, you read 3. No, I'll read 3 and you read 2, and blah, 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 you know how it goes. Anyway, so building it up, and then gradually you can be reading a series of real chapter books with soccer, or just stick to lots and lots of non-fiction, all the football clubs, about strikers, about goalies, about famous football players, but anything to keep that love of reading alive. Right, let's see. Now, can you talk to each other about the kind of books your children really love? Comics, yeah? Any more? Harry Potter? Yes? What do you love? Harry Potter. Scary books? Yeah. Funny books? Dark? Yeah? Anything else? Animals? Yeah. Trains, planes, cars, history, mysteries? Yeah. Funny usually is great for children of all ages to get started. Okay. Then I'd like to talk a little about the vocabulary we use. What kind of vocabulary do you use around children who don't love to read? Some names. What are the labels we're using? Yes? Nah. So children who don't like to read. Any words we use towards them?
Like you discussed, like he loves to be read to, so he goes and picks up all these books that he loves, expects me to read them to him, and when he doesn't end up reading them, we do all these negotiations and all of that. So I tell him, okay, so let's give these to your friends then if you're not reading them, and then he's like, no, these are mine.
These are mine. These are mine. Yeah. So there's a lot of things we can call children illiterate. They can read, but they don't want to. Reluctant readers, we hear the term striving reader. So they want to, but they're not yet there. I think sometimes reluctance can mask something bigger. And reading requires a lot of focus. So often something else is comorbid, if you understand the term comorbid, with not reading. So they're not reading because they don't have the fluency. It doesn't go fast enough. They get bored. That's why they want us to read. So we need to try and get that fluency up. So it's quite important actually to get some help, professional help. And that's also the argument of Marianne Wolf. She said we know so much about the neuroscience of reading, and we're not applying it in our schools, and we're not applying it in teaching children to read. So that's an important step as well, to actually find out what is causing that reluctance. Are they not spending enough time reading? Is there not enough of what they want to read? Are they lacking in focus? And how can we help them to read? Anyone else with questions or comments? Yeah.
So this question is for the moms who have boys. I wanted to ask, if we, so you said social reading, if we have a book club, what format should be that book club in?
Okay, I can just speak to what worked for us. So what we did was the first 15, 20 minutes were absolute just fun. So they were doing icebreakers. They were playing grenade, where you're throwing the grenade, and if you do something wrong and you drop it, the grenade goes off and you're out. They were doing card tricks. That was one of the things that really got them going, was they wanted to learn how to do all these card tricks and magic tricks. So that I had to buy this pile of magic books, and they were borrowing the books in order to learn a magic trick to be able to show their mates the next week. So that kind of thing. But just really, really, really fun, goofy, silly things the first time. And then we'd do a activity that was based on reading. So like a book tasting, or like charades with books, or I've got actually on a website all the different activities we did with them. So definitely a literacy activity, or they had to read in a book and they had to find the funniest paragraph, or the silliest paragraph, or the most stupid thing that the author had said, which meant they actually had to go in and read and try and read and locate stuff quickly. And then towards the end, as they became much stronger readers, they used to stand up after the icebreaker. They'd stand up and they'd actually spend time talking about books they loved. I had a really tough guy in one of my classes. He hated reading, and because he was such a strong personality, all the kids around him his whole class was following this. And I gave him a book. It's called Pearl versus the World, and it's a verse novel. And I said to him, I'm going to make you cry. And he was like, whatever. And I said, go home and read this book. And because it's a verse novel, it was a lot easier to read. And, he could read it in one sitting. And that night, I got an email back from him, and it was a video email of him crying and telling me how the book had made him cry, how special that book had been to him. And then the very next time he came together with his class, just before the class, he came to me and he said, Miss Nadine, do you mind if I speak about my book? I'm in the wrong spot, obviously. And he stood up in front of his class, and, he was like all jokey and whatever, and I read this book, and it's really sad, and by the end of the 1 minute talk, he was crying again. And then the whole class wanted to read the book.
So influences can have such a powerful impact on. I do a lot of children recommending to children, because I don't know, I read a book on one level, they read a book on a completely different level. They're more likely to read something that their friends recommend and I recommend or their parents recommend. That's what's important. And if you can find one or two influences, and there's always, the kids. It's the kids who, if they are wearing Nike this year, everyone's wearing Nike. And if it's Adidas, they're all wearing Adidas. Okay, if they are all reading 13-Story Treehouse, everybody's reading 13-Story Treehouse.
I have a question for you. This is on behalf of all the expectant mothers, the newborns yet to come. When my daughter was born, the first gift that we received was a black and white book, no words, big pictures of a bear, cat, dog. And I was asked to read it to her. Newborn, she could barely open her eyes. But I, like a religious mom, did everything. And I did not like to read at all. But I did everything for her. It turned out okay. She's a great reader. But have you heard of it? Have you heard of this? Is this scientifically proven that if you start at that young age, for a boy or a girl, they would be good readers?
I read to both of my children from birth. Starting with books they couldn't rip when they were littler. I don't know about the black and white simple one. With my daughter, she was a brilliant reader. With my son, he wasn't. My son, I must say, he always liked books where he could do something. So he loved the ones where you lifted the flaps or you scratched or rubbed or something. So he was a much more tactile. Because I think sometimes there is an issue neurologically, just to be blunt, and no matter how much you read to them and with them, they need more help than you can provide by just reading to them. And believe me, it wasn't a shortage of reading to them. And I think at that point, either you or the teacher or both, and what I always kind of resented was the teachers never said there's a problem. So there's this line, and it's like, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay that they're not reading. And then suddenly, it's not okay. And then it's a huge problem. Does anyone feel that's incredibly dishonest? Right? So the kid's 6 and they're 7 and it's okay and it's okay, and suddenly they're 8 and it's like, oh my God, the child's not reading. There's a problem, let's get help for him. So it's like, what? All these years you've been saying to me, oh, but in Scandinavia, they don't read until they're 8 and it's okay, and by the time they're 10, they're all reading. That's not good enough, to be honest. It's really not good enough. And now very, very interestingly, and I wish I'd known this much earlier, and when I read Proust and the Squid, this came up, and it's got to do with naming. My son never knew his colors. He could never name his colors. So he always, it was an issue as a little baby and as a child and as a toddler. And you know how kids are, and you're doing, oh, it's red and it's yellow and it's orange and whatever. And he'd mix the colors up, and we thought he was colorblind. And he wasn't colorblind. And then when I read Proust and the Squid, it was like, it's a naming problem. And children who have difficulty naming colors often have a problem reading. And don't ask me the neurology about this, but and read her book. But this is one sure way that you can tell it's not just a case of it's okay, it's going to be okay. No, it's not going to be okay, and you actually need extra intervention with this child.
A last question, please.
I think just to add on to that, Nadine, can you talk a little bit about dyslexia, or for parents whose kids may not be reading, even if the parent is reading to the child a lot, what do they need to watch out for as clues that actually they need some sort of intervention to help a child learn to read or become a better reader? And when in a timeline would that happen? It's a big topic.
It's really hard. That's a huge topic. Yeah, would you like to?
No, I'm not qualified to reply to that, but I just wanted to bring something else to the table. is that, so I love reading, I write, my son reads, and I've never had a problem with reading per se in my house. But I've had siblings, like I have twin siblings who never read, who still don't read. And it sort of brings me to this question of, there seem to be two boxes of children who read and children who don't read. My point is that even the children who don't read are reading something. They are reading people. They are reading the world around them. They are reading, experiences. They are reading signs. They are reading. So they are engaging in reading in different ways, even if they are not in love with books. So I just feel sometimes that the world is too harsh, and especially schools, teachers, parents, make this very divisive thing about readers and non-readers, and the poor children who don't read and who, no matter what you do, will not really enjoy reading. They may do it to please you, or they may do it to please their peers, but it will not be the first thing, or it will not be the thing that comes to them from within. So I just feel that sometimes it's okay not to read. I mean, I would love for everyone to read, but it should not be a gold standard, because there's so many other ways in which you can read.
Yeah, you and my son too. He says exactly the same things. He's like, I'm always reading online. I'm always involved with text. So rather than being immersed in a book, I'm always involved in reading text. It's no problem as long as they can access text at the level required academically. And the teachers amongst here will know as they go up in their studies, and I'm not saying the gold standard is to go to university, but most people now need to complete high school. And if they're not accessing text at the speed and fluency and depth necessary to successfully complete studies, a whole lot of different stuff starts happening to them, and they get problems with self-confidence, they get problems with their self-image and all that, and that's when it's a problem. If they can still avoid reading novels and whatever and successfully get through school, not a problem. I'm talking about the group of children for whom it's such a struggle, they just can't keep up with the pace. Not having to go into the depths of literacy, but they can't read their science text on time. They can't finish the history text on time because they're not reading at the level they need.
Thank you so much, Nadine. I think that's going to help a lot of us teachers and parents alike. I welcome our students, Krisha and Gauri from grade 9, and they're going to talk, grade 8, and they're going to talk a little about when they read.
Hi, I'm Krisha.
My name's Gauri.
When I read, sometimes I forget that I'm reading a book. I get so captured by the descriptions, the people, the places, the words, that I imagine a series of events happening in my head as I turn the page. Each word gives meaning to the other, creating a whole new perspective in my mind. To me, reading isn't just about following a plot or knowing a storyline. It's about getting to know the characters, facing what they go through, experiencing a life in a different place and a different time. Reading is about discovering yourself through the conversations the characters have, through the relationships they have.
It's about getting lost in a whole new world and experiencing things that you never knew you could. You live through the characters and their adventures. Reading is about discovering escaping real life, even if it's just for 30 minutes. It's an amazing feeling, the feeling of getting so lost in a book that you can't even put it down. I was never an avid reader, but this year all of that changed. The moment I felt that feeling, I was hooked. You see, I was forced to go to the library with my uncle in the US, and he forced me to pick up a book. I picked up The Hate You Give just because it had a good cover, but after I started reading it, I really enjoyed the book and I became completely attached to it. Since then, I've connected that way to many other books. And now I'm always looking for new books to read or getting recommendations from my friends. Reading has opened a whole new world for me, a world I can run away to whenever I want.
Sometimes I feel a part of the story. I know some of the characters so well that I try to predict what's going to happen. I try to tell the characters to change the course of events, to do something that could completely change the book. In the process, using my own imagination to come up with a different ending. In fact, Reading has helped me improve my vocabulary, and the books I read have completely changed the way I write and speak. But the thing about books these days is that the characters in some of them are so relatable. They're so similar to the people, to the situations that exist in reality. Some of these scenarios and characters help people deal with their problems, help people find a way to tackle their issues the way a character would. When I read a series, I get attached to a character, like I know them in reality. And these characters help me build relationships. Characters give meaning to the novel. They give the reader a reason to read, a reason to learn what happens next. The character ties all the elements together, the setting, the plot, the time, the events, and makes each one of them seem real.
If you asked me if reading changed my life, I would now say yes. I think reading is such a great tool to not only learn, but to appreciate writing styles and character developments. I think it's absolutely amazing how authors use their words to help the readers form a relationship with the characters. I know that I definitely connected with some characters and felt for them in the different situations they were faced with.
That's why we love reading, because the character is so much more than just a person in a book. And a book is so much more than just a bunch of papers.
So all we would like to say is thank you to all the inspiring authors out there for writing books that we can connect to and love. Thank you.
Thank you, Krisha and Gauri. Morals have long been the conclusion of fables and fairy tales aimed at kids. And today's TV shows and movies are no different. They often weave lessons for the younger generation into their narratives. But do children actually absorb these messages? Or do these endings just help parents feel better about the media their kids consume? Today we have our author, illustrator Deepa Balsavar, who is going to chat about what is the moral of the story. So a little bit about Ms. Deepa Balsavar. So she's a writer and has illustrated books for young children. She's also a storyteller and has performed at children's festival and literary events around the country. Deepa's bilingual book, The Seed, was selected as one of the outstanding international books of the year 2006 by White Raven Children's Library, Germany. Now let's listen to Deepa, what she has to say about this topic.
My name seems to have cleared the hall completely. Never mind, sometimes the best audiences are the smallest ones. So I hope we'll be able to have a good chat together. Absolutely, absolutely. So, you know, I was wondering what sort of topic to take for this personal discussion. And I was thinking about something that happened just a little while ago. I was invited to the birthday party of my grandnephew. Now, I'm usually very popular at birthday parties because I don't have any qualms about getting down on all fours and pretending to be a lion or a tiger or an elephant. And I love telling stories to children. So my niece said to me, Deepa, why don't you come and tell a story at my son's birthday party? So here I was with a group of 3 to 5-year-olds, and I told them a story. What I'd like to do with your indulgence is tell the story to you, because the story itself forms part of what transpired later. So the story is about Curious Monkey. Curious Monkey had a terrible cold. Achh! She said. When she sneezed, her friend woke up with a start and said, you know, that was loud. I almost fell off the tree. Said Curious Monkey. If you think my sneeze was loud, how loud do you think an elephant's sneeze would be? Well, I don't know, said her friend. It would be loud, wouldn't it? Yes, but how loud, said Curious Monkey. So her friend went, achoo! Said Curious Monkey. I'm not convinced. Nor am I, said a little voice. And they looked down, and at the bottom of the tree was a little porcupine. It had been busy searching for crunchy beetles to eat and nice juicy worms to consume. And it stopped and looked up at Monkey and friend. Do you know how loud an elephant sneezes? Asked Curious Monkey. Well, I think it would be huge, said the porcupine. And blowing out his little cheeks, his nose quivered, and he went, achoo! Wow, said little Monkey. That sounds better, came a voice. And of course, it was the wild boar. The wild boar rushed out of the bushes and said, nothing like that at all. I know what an elephant sneeze is like. Oh, do you now? Said the porcupine. Then let's hear you do better. So wild boar blew out his cheeks and he went, achoo! Frankly, I don't think his sneeze was any better than his grunt. Who's that? Said a deer coming into the clearing. We're trying to find out how loud an elephant sneezes, said Curious Monkey. Oh, I don't sneeze loudly, said the deer. I always try to sneeze very politely. But the elephant would have a huge, disgusting sneeze. I know how loud an elephant sneezes, said another voice. And from behind a tree came a huge wild forest buffalo. His huge horns were festooned with vines and trailers of grasses, and on his back was a little white bird that was busy pecking at the ticks and eating them. I know how big an elephant sneezes, said the wild buffalo. And opening his mouth out large and wide, he said, achoo! Not bad, came a voice. Not bad, but not quite. Unknown to any of them, a large tiger had come up quietly. She opened her large mouth and displayed yellow teeth and said, that's not bad at all, but an elephant sneeze is louder than that. And opening wide her mouth, she said, achoo! Wow, thought the Curious Monkey. That was fantastic. Surely that should be right. But while they were talking, a nice, gentle elephant had ambled by. And the gentle elephant looked in and said, does somebody here have a cold? Because I have a cold and I think I have a sneeze coming on. What? Said the tiger and jumped over the bushes. What? Roared the buffalo and made off as fast as he could. What? Barked the deer and jumped over the undergrowth. What? Said the wild boar and started digging frantically. What? Said the porcupine, shooting quills all over the place. What? Said Curious Monkey's friend. And, oh wow, said Curious Monkey, now we're going to hear the real thing. So the elephant scrunched up his trunk, opened his mouth, and went, ah, ah, ah. The whole forest waited, wanting to know what was to come. Ah, 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 ah. And then the elephant opened his eyes and said, that was good. A good sneeze helps to clear out the nose. But where have all the other animals got to? And up in the tree, Curious Monkey said, well, do you know how loud an elephant sneezes now? Asked the Curious Monkey's friend. And Curious Monkey said, yes, but I was wondering. And so her friend said, I think that's enough. You can ask your question some other time, and flew away. So anyway, this was the story that I told this little group of 3 to 5-year-olds. And in a group when there are many children, as you can imagine, that by the time I get to the second character, everybody wants to sneeze along. And so we had sneezes with the porcupines, and we had sneezes with the wild boar, and sneezes with the deer, and of course everybody was sneezing along with the tiger and with the wild buffalo. And then, because they didn't want to stop sneezing, we had, how does your papa sneeze, and how loud is your mama sneeze, and do dogs sneeze, and do cats sneeze, and we had the sneezes of all sorts of other animals. So that was over, and after that was over, and the story was all done with and dusted, a mother came up to me with her little son, and she said, you know, my son and I really, really enjoyed the story. We loved it. Now, Aryan, tell me, what did you learn from the story? And frankly, I was a bit flabbergasted, and I said, no. He enjoyed it, that's fine. And she said, no, Aryan, what did you learn? Huh? Tell auntie, what did you learn? You learned small things can make very big noises. And I said, that's not what I had wanted to say at all. But I found this increasingly, that when it comes to storytelling or when it comes to books, a lot of us adults want to reduce the story to an easily accepted sound bite or a moral or a proverb that can be hand-given or given to the children as a take-home from the story. When I was very young, and that was a very long time ago, we used to have Panchatantra tales and Aesop's fables, and after a page of story, at the bottom it always said moral. And it said, united we stand, divided we fall. A friend in need is a friend indeed. Speech is golden, but silence is divine, and things like that. I remember those proverbs, but I don't ever remember helping a friend who was in need because of the proverb. I don't ever remember keeping quiet when I wanted to be noisy. And I don't ever remember uniting with people just because there was some larger, goal to be achieved. So I thought, what is it that makes it do it? Is it only me who's feeling this? So I went to this friend of mine who has one of the most wonderful children's bookshops in Bombay. And it's called Kitab Khana, and it's dedicated, it's called Kahani Tree, and it's dedicated to children's books. So my friend's called Sangeeta, and I went to Sangeeta, and I said, Sangeeta, tell me, when parents come to your bookshops, what do they ask for? Do they ask for books with morals? So she said, no, they're not called books with morals anymore, they're called value books. So when parents come, they ask for value books. So I said, so what do you give them as value books? So she said, it's very difficult because I try to tell them there's some value in every book, that there's something to be sought for in every book. And it's not just one moral or one proverb that one can get at the end of it, but there's something to be seen in every book. So I said, okay. She says, sometimes one has to sell a book. One has to point out to them that, look, this is there and this is also there. What is unsaid is as important, especially in picture books, as what is said. What are the pictures showing? Are they showing inclusion? Are they showing acceptance of disability? Are they showing acceptance of people of different color? Are they showing cooperation? Are they showing all these things? Because people want to just read something and have done with it quickly. So I said, okay, tell me what librarians search for when they come for books. So she said to me, unfortunately, librarians come with a budget. That means they have X amount of money that they want to spend, and so when they come to the library, they want to know what they can get for 50 rupees and what they can get for 150 rupees, and that fills their stock. I said, okay, so tell me, what do children want? So she looked at me and she said, frankly and unfortunately, when children come here, they want the biggest and the most colorful, which is why we need to work with children and tell them to look at the little things as well. And she said it's a hard job sometimes. And the wonderful thing about Kahani Tree is that when you enter, you have to go through a whole section of Indian books first, before you can enter the second door, which takes you out to a whole section of foreign books. So when you come to the Indian section's books, there's where Sangeeta stops people and she says, have you seen this book? See how wonderful it is and see all the things that it talks about. And then, only then do people go to the section of foreign books. So what is it that I'm saying? Is it wrong to teach morals and all that to your children? Of course it isn't. But most books don't have just one proverb or one moral. They have many things to them. So if you try to reduce a book to one end story, then you're missing out on all the other little end stories that are contained through all the pictures, through all the other things that are sent, through all the other messages that are given out by the book. Secondly, that no matter how many morals are read out through storybooks, remember that children do as adults do. So you can't tell children to read if they don't see you reading. You can't tell children to stop talking if you're constantly gabbing on a cell phone. You can't ask children to be kind to people if you are rude to service staff. So that's the second thing I've learned. I look forward to a day when parents come in and ask for books for children, they're not just looking for books with a single moral or a single easily reducible mouth bite to give. But they're looking for other things as well. They're looking for equality. They're looking for inclusiveness. They're looking for not the things that we conventionally look for, but they're looking towards acceptance of people of different colors and of different social backgrounds. And finally, I'm looking forward to a day when I finish a story, Aryan's mother will come up to me and say, my son and I really enjoyed the story, and not follow it up with, Aryan, what did you learn from this story? So that's the day I'm looking forward to. Thank you. I do mainly picture books for stories and for children. I don't know whether you've seen any of my books, but if you'd like to ask me any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Yes,
in the story, the monkey had a friend.
Yes.
But what animal was the monkey's friend?
That's very interesting, because what animal would you like it to be?
A unicorn.
Then there was a unicorn, and that's why he flew away in the end. I think that's a perfect friend for a monkey. Although I think imagining a unicorn sitting on the topmost branch of a tree would be a bit of a challenge, but a unicorn would make a great friend. And thank you for noticing that I didn't say who the friend was.
Okay, so I have one question
Yeah.
for you. A lot of students of mine, typically teenagers, pre-adolescents, adolescents, they are drawn naturally towards very dark, dystopic literature.
Yeah.
How do you connect that with morality? I totally agree with you that it shouldn't be overtly moral, but how do you connect that extreme to?
Well, you know, I think we all went through a phase where we were drawn towards dark, angst-ridden stuff and all that. It's part of the whole process of growing up. I was reading somewhere that the adolescent years are particularly special because the brain reinvents itself. It's not just a question of chemicals and hormonal changes in the body, but it's also a question of the brain actually remaking itself and trying to figure out this difference between being a state of accepting what others have said to converting to a stage where understanding and making sense of the world for yourself. And as long as it doesn't lead to signs that are disturbing, you know, harming others, harming oneself, doing things that are that send you signals that something is wrong here, I think it's perfectly fine. I am a devourer of dark and dismal stories myself. Absolutely, and there's nothing better than you know, an evening curling up with a good murder where at least 15 people are killed in the most gory fashion. So I think there's nothing really wrong with it. Yes.
What made you speak, I mean, in this world right now where everybody wants a moral out of a story, what inspired you to speak about, like, let's not have a moral to the story and just speak about the story?
Well, because, I mean, I have been working with children for the past 35 years now. And most of the time I listen rather than talk, and I look rather than this. And I realize that it's never been the handing down that morals that convinces a child. children notice things at their own pace and at their own time. If the book says many things, but in a non-obvious way, the children will pick up on that. I have to tell you another little story. I was once contacted by a school that said that they wanted to pick up 250 copies of my first book called The Seed. And they said for the entire pre-primary as Christmas presents for them. And I was, of course, over the moon, and I said, fine. And they said, two things. One is, will you sign each copy? I said, I will sign each copy, I will draw in each copy, and I will do it standing on my head. Because for a children's author to sell 250 copies in one go it's like heaven. And I said, second thing, when our trustees got together to try and decide which book was to be given out, they all agreed it was to be your book, but they all had different things to say about the message of the book. So, can you tell me what is the message of the book? And I said, yes. So she said, what's the message of the book? So I said, yes. So she said, what do you mean? So I said, it's everything that they saw in it. Because who am I to tell you that this is what you have to read? And The Seed is a very, very simple little book. It's a bilingual book. And it talks about a little girl finding a seed. And she finds a broken pot, and she puts the seed in the pot, and she puts a little bit of earth on it, and she gives it a little bit of water and puts it in the sun. And a few days later, the seed sprouts. And she's so happy, she takes it to her grandmother, and her grandmother says, is it going to be a bush? And she says, she looks at it because she doesn't know what the seed came from. And she takes it to her grandfather, and her grandfather says, will it grow big? And she says, I don't know. And she takes it to her sister, and her sister says, will it have flowers? And she really doesn't know what kind of tree it's going to grow up to be. And she takes it to her brother, and he says, will it have fruits? And she doesn't know. And she takes it to her father, and he says, will it grow really tall? And then she takes it to her mother, who says, will it remain small? And by this time, her happiness at having found the seed and planted it and grown this little sprout has, her mouth has turned downward, and she takes the plant away, and she puts it with some other plants, and she skips next to it, and she sits next to it, and she talks. And then she looks at the plant, which has grown 3 more leaves, and she says, it doesn't matter. So that really is a story that, to me, of course, the analogy is with children, and saying that just like a plant, if you give a child the nourishment that it needs, the environment, the love, it doesn't really matter what the child is going to grow up to be. And that the last thing you should ask of a child is, do you want to be a doctor, or do you want to be an engineer, or do you want to be... So that was one of the messages of the book. It was never stated, and if somebody didn't get it, that was perfectly all right. There were those who just saw the method of growing a plant. And there were others who pointed out to their children, look, there's Dadi, Dada, Nani, Nani, grandmother, father, mother, brother, sister. Okay, you're teaching relationships, that's fine. And there were others who were teaching big and small and tree and bush and leaves and flowers. So that's why when I said, okay, I truly meant it. That it doesn't really matter what you get out, as long as you get something out of it. And if it makes you go back to the book and look at it again and see something else, and go back again and see something else, then I feel my job is done. And if the trustees all saw a different message in the book, then I'm over the moon. So that's why I'm strongly of the opinion that sometimes we tell children too much what to think. Give them the environment that they need to be good human beings, to see the behavior that you want to see emulated, and they'll do it, and they'll pick it up from the books as well.
Thank you so much, Ms. Wells.
Name is Deepika Murthy, and I write under the pen name Pika Nani. I am the author of 2 books. My first book is Little Indians. It has stories from across the country. And my latest book is The Adventures of Shrilok Homeless. It is a detective mystery. And so today, that's what we are going to do. Instead of talking about my book more right now, I think we should start the session. What we're going to do is we're going to have a quiz about Sherlock Holmes. How many of you have heard of Sherlock Holmes? Everybody, right? And how many of you are fans of Sherlock Holmes? Okay, good. There are very simple rules for the quiz. Each question will have two options, A and B. Now, I want all of you to participate. So when I say option A, all those who think option A is correct, just raise up your hand. And those who think option B is the correct answer, okay, raise up your hand, and we'll see who gets the correct answer. Okay, so shall we start? Are you ready? Okay. Which year was the first Sherlock Holmes story published? Was it 1887 or is it 1916? How many of you think it is A? Okay, I can see a few hands. How many of you think it's B, 1916? Okay, so shockingly, it's more than 130 years old. So it's actually the option A, 1887. Can you believe it? So it's almost 131 years old. And Sherlock Holmes is a sort of a legend, right? In these 130 years, there have been countless adaptations in movies, theater, TV, and even books. So when I wanted to write a detective story, I realized that there hasn't been an Indian character based on Sherlock Holmes since the 1960s. Okay? So I thought, why not write a story which kind of Indianizes the great detective? And so my book, The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, was born. Okay, so now let's go to the second question. What was Arthur Conan Doyle going to name his detective initially? I mean, what was he going to name Sherlock? Was it A, Sherrinford, or was it B, Bromley? Those of you here, if you can't, I think you can probably shift this side. Can you see? Can everybody see the screen? Yeah. So how many of you think it's A, Sherrinford? Okay. There's no option C, right? For those who are not lifting their hand for both, there is no option C. So either you have to put up your hand for A or B. So I want everyone to participate, okay? So how many of you think it's B? Okay, no. So actually, he was going to name him Sherrinford. But I think Sherrinford Holmes would not have the same effect, right, as Sherlock Holmes. Or maybe it would have, we don't know. But what we know is naming a character is very important, what you think of the name. So I wanted to think of a name that would remind people of Sherlock Holmes without stating it obviously. So if you see, a moment you see the cover, it looks like Sherlock, though it's Shrilok, and Shrilok is very much an Indian name. Okay? And it's homeless because the detective himself calls himself homeless. He's a roadside chaiwala and an orphan. And how the title, again, you can see it's written home and less. So the mystery of the title itself is revealed in the first pages itself, where actually the book is written by his friend. And then he comes and adds the less, so it becomes Sherlock Homeless, which is supposed to remind you of Sherlock Holmes. For those who are joining now, we are having a quiz on Sherlock Holmes, okay? And I'll just repeat the rules again. If you think the answer is A, put up your hand. If you think the answer is B, raise your hand. Okay, shall we go to the next question? What is the address of Sherlock Holmes in London? Is it A, 231B, Bond Street? Is it B, 221B, Baker Street? How many of you think it's A? Okay, how many of you think it's B? Oh, very good. So this is, the audience wins because it is Baker Street, 221B, Baker Street. In fact, it's a museum now, Sherlock Museum there. Sherlock Holmes is from Mumbai. And the reason I've chosen Mumbai is not just because I grew up in the city, which I did. It's a city, it's like a mini India. There are people from all parts of the country who have made it their home for many years now. It's happening in Bangalore now, maybe in the last 10 years or so. But Mumbai has always been like that. So it is like a mini India. And so if I had to choose one city in the country to base my book, I thought Mumbai was the one. And also it's happening, say, in terms of, maybe the underworld or terrorist threats. When you think of, you'll think of Mumbai.
Hello.
Okay, what is Watson's profession? This must be an easy one.
Yeah, sure.
Was he A, or doctor? Or is he B, a professor? How many think he's a doctor? Okay, and how many think he's a professor? Yeah, he's doctor, right? He's called Dr. Watson. So Dr. Watson was the perfect partner for Sherlock Holmes, right? So you can't imagine Sherlock Holmes without Dr. Watson. So in the same way, in my book, for Shrilok Homeless has a friend, a 6th standard boy called Rohan Doctor. Now, he's not a doctor, but his doctor is his surname. Some of you might know that Parsi is a small community in Mumbai, and they have surnames like engineer, doctor, vakil, right? So actually, doctor is his surname. He's not actually a doctor. And he is the one who writes down the cases. And the book is written in his voice. So it's like Rohan has written the book. So it's written as a 6th standard student would write. Okay? The inspector who frequently appears in Sherlock Holmes stories. Is it Inspector Gregson or is it Inspector Lestrade? How many of you think it's A? Okay, and how many of you think it's B? Oh, okay, correct, good. So it is Inspector Lestrade. He is supposed to be the typical Scotland Yard man, right? So, but in my book, I wanted the inspector to be a little stronger. So there is a Mumbai cop called Divya Lokhande. She's a tough cop, and she is always ready to, take down any goons. But she needs Shrilok, she needs his intelligence, and together they join forces to solve many cases and to take down many criminals. Okay, the adventure of the blue carbuncle, where is the jewel found? Is it A, in the stomach of a goose, or B, in the heart of a client? How many of you think it's A? Okay, and how many of you think it's B? No, it was found in the stomach of a goose. So when they cut open, there's a diamond. The blue carbuncle is basically a blue diamond. So my stories are actually for 9+ years old, and Sherlock Holmes was for adults. So the stories or the plots are very different. But what I have done is certain things, certain elements I have taken from the original stories, which you'll find here. So this is one of the elements. So in this story, what happens is it's about my story is about a jewelry thief who steals from a jewelry store. But the problem is that since the store opened and still since the theft has happened, nobody has left the store or nobody has come in. Okay? And yet the pink diamond is found in a vada pav, somewhere far away in Dadar. So how it happened, how it came there. So that, those few things are resembling, whereas the rest of the story about the theft is very different. Whereas in the original story, the theft would have happened, and they finally find it there. Here it starts with finding it in a vada pav, and then figuring out how would it get out of a closed room in a vada pav. Okay, what's the habit of Sherlock Holmes? Is it A, smoking tobacco pipes, or B, drinking tea? How many of you think it's A? Okay, and how many of you think it's B? No, so I think, yeah, audience was correct again. It is smoking tobacco pipes. Drinking tea is a habit of Shrilok Homeless, because he's a chai wala. Okay, he has a tea stall, and he likes to drink tea. In fact, he uses a lot of tea metaphors. Like he will say, oh, this case is like a masala chai for the mind. Okay, or he'll say, okay, now we have put all the ingredients, we have to wait for the tea to boil. So he uses a lot of tea metaphors, and he's a chai wala who likes to drink tea. A method used by Sherlock Holmes. Is it A, fingerprint analysis, or B, handwriting analysis? How many of you think that it's A, fingerprint analysis? Okay, and how many of you think it is B, handwriting analysis? Okay, you know what? This was a trick question, because he used both. In fact, apparently, the whole art of fingerprint analysis had just started off that time, right, in 1887. Handwriting analysis is also something he talks a lot about. As we know, both these methods are still very much in use. But technology has enabled so many new techniques, right? So there are CCTV cameras, there are mobile phones, GPS. In fact, in one of the cases, there's a clue Shrilok gets from a selfie. So the selfie itself becomes an evidence. Okay? So in my book, we have used a lot of these new technologies. And then the mobile phone itself, in fact, it creates a bit of complication also. Because in those days, there wasn't any, not even, I think, telephones also. So always Sherlock Holmes would have his clients who come to him in a horse-drawn carriage, if you read any of his books. Whereas here, because of so much of technology, even solving the cases or even writing about the cases, you have to keep all those in mind. And also the crimes themselves, like I have written about ATM thefts or terrorist plots. So even the criminals themselves are using a lot of technology. So I think the big difference in this 130 years has been the use of technology. Though these both are still much in use, okay, which is a popular phrase attributed to Sherlock, though it does not appear in the stories. Remember, the point is it does not appear in the stories. Is it elementary, my dear Watson? Or is it B, the game's afoot? How many of you think it's A, elementary, my dear Watson? Okay. And how many of you think it's B, the game's afoot? Yeah. So the game's afoot actually does appear. He does say once. But elementary, my dear Watson, shockingly even for me, he never says it once. He only uses the word elementary. Or in some other places, he says, my dear Watson. So the first person to actually combine and use this phrase, elementary, my dear Watson, was a person called P.G. Wodehouse. How many of you know P.G. Wodehouse? Yeah, so he used elementary, my dear Watson first, right? So what that shows us that dialogues are very important and remembered for a long. So what does Shrilok do is he uses, since he's a Mumbai chaiwala and a street kid, he uses Mumbaiya words, like he will say, ekdam right bhidu, okay, he will say, for problem he'll call locha, or he will say, oh, it's very khatarnak. So there are a lot of these English words in my book. In the final problem, how was Sherlock supposed to have died? Okay? A, he leapt to his death from a roof of a hospital, or B, he fell off a cliff into a waterfall. So how many of you think it's A? Okay, and how many of you think it's B? Well, yeah, actually it was B. So he was in a combat with his enemy Moriarty, right? And they stumble, but we found out later on that he did not actually die. So he comes back. So in my book too, he has an enemy who's a terrorist, and there's a face-off. So what happens, does he die? He falls off a bridge actually. So what happens? Is he able to survive? Does he come back? So all that you have to read my book to find out. So I hope you've enjoyed the quiz, and I really hope you like reading about a Desi Sherlock. Okay, thanks a lot.
Up next is Martin Kisko, a man who doesn't need any introduction. Put your hands together for Martin to take center stage. Or leave the podium. While Martin is performing, it can get a little distracting, so thank you for your cooperation.
Neev Literature Festival. My name is Martin Kiszko. I'm the UK's Green Poet. I'm going to be performing for you today from my books Green Poems for a Blue Planet and Verse for the Earth. All my poetry is about environmental issues. I hope you enjoy. Now, are there any greenies here today? Do you know what a greenie is? A greenie is a person who doesn't shoot lions and has a bag for life. Okay? Any greenies here? Any environmentally friendly people here today? Yeah, okay. Any non-greenies? One non-greenie. What should we do with him? Over the edge. Any in-betweenies? Okay. Okay, well look, welcome greenies, welcome non-greenies, welcome in-betweenies. Welcome those of you that have recycled your Lamborghinis. Welcome those of you toasting your homemade biofuels with a martini. Welcome those of you fans of organic green beanies. Welcome all those of you hippies with holes in your jeans. Welcome all those of you cool, classic, chilled fans of Boccherini, Rossini, Puccini. Welcome those of you that have sold off all your Giovanni Bellinis so that you can sustainably invest in your future bambini. Welcome those of you that have given up your lattes and your paninis so that you can fit into your boxers and your bikinis. Welcome those of you that have stopped eating your fettuccine and your linguine to keep your tums teeny and your bums weeny. Welcome those of you, eco-green warriors with the heart of an eco-Athene. Welcome those of you that want to see the earth set free from the shackles and chains of those naughty non-greenies. You know what I mean? That's the best I can do rhyming with greenie. So, how have you come here today, all you environmentally friendly people? Of course you walked here. Of course you came on your skateboards. Yeah? So, how can we travel around without using a car? Take away carbon. Take a step, take a stride, take a unicycle ride, take a horse that likes the turf, take a board to ride the surf, take a pogo, take a hop, take a long jump, take a bop, take a rowboat, walk a lane, take the tube, take the train, take an elephant, take a mule, take a camel to your school, take a buggy, take a pram, take a donkey, take a tram, take a troika, take a sled, take a trolley, roll a bed, take a team of husky dogs, woof. Take a set of rolling logs, take a jog, take an amble, take a jaunt, take a ramble, take a skateboard, take a bike, take a saunter, take a hike, take a ghost ship, trike or scooter, take a go-kart and a hooter, take a wagon, take a tandem, take a route you went at random, take a kayak or canoe, take a ski or take snowshoes, take a punt, take a sail, take a glider, go by rail, 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 go by rail. Take a wheelchair, take a cart, take a butt-fired super fart, take a hang glide from a loft, take sedan chairs, take a trot, take a sleep walk, take a prom, take a rickshaw from Hong Kong, take a snowboard, take a trek, take some stilts, take a pumpkin coach with fairies. Take a milk float from the dairies. Take a pair of roller skates. Take piggybacks at all your mates. Take journeys that don't use a car. Take stock if you should go that far. Take heed when traveling here and there. Make choices that will save our... Well done. But if I had to choose a car, sorry, there is a technical problem. We'll just wait for the technical problem to be solved. Okay. If I had to choose a car, what kind of environmentally friendly car would I choose? Well, from Bangalore to Panama, from Canada to Kandahar, from Dhofar to your local bar, they're talking about the greenest car. Mums, dads, grandmas, grandpapas in LA, London, Zanzibar, whether poor or superstars, are green with envy for the car. In Detroit, Frankfurt, and Geneva, there's eco-auto tweeting fever. The meanest, cleanest car has tire-marked social media. What is this car? I hear you say. Would you like the expose? The buzz is stop-start fuel consumption. Battery, lithium-ion battery function, brake energy regeneration, aerodynamic calibration. The engine runs on rotten eggs, tea and cappuccino dregs. Its bumpers, they're made of hay. The spec says that it's fold-away. The dashboard features deer detection and badger warning light protection. Cat sat-nav is in the deal. No more meows from beneath the wheels. Even hedgehogs, hares and toads are lining up along the roads. They've read in What Green Car Is That about the frog-hog anti-splat. And also included in the price, the Save a Pheasant scan device. And for any wildlife hitch or glitch, flick the pelt prevention switch. So, with all the who and all the ha, the posts and tweets and blogs and blah, I'd say this model's best by far if I had to choose a car. And when it comes to traveling, what kind of fuels are we going to use? Because in Bristol, where I come from, in the UK, a couple of years ago, when we became the most sustainable city in Europe, we became the European Green Capital. On our number 2 bus route in Bristol, we had some buses that ran on biogas made from human poo. On our number 2 route. How about that? Yeah. You see, we like humor in our city, and that's what we got. So, of course, what I'd like you to do is, some of you I know would really like to create your own energy from poo, wouldn't you? Yeah, and you can, a lot of communities create it from animal poo and some from human poo. So I'm going to teach you how to create your own energy from animal poo. Okay, so now listen, if you want to try this when you go home tonight, okay, if you're kind of like under 12 years old, ask your mum or your dad to help you, okay? Or ask your teacher the next day to help you, okay? And if you're over 12 years old or if you've got a partner, ask your partner to help you out because it can get really messy, okay? So here we go. At the end of this poem, I want you to do the poo power salute, and it goes like this. Poo power! Okay, 1, 2, 3. And louder, 1, 2, 3. Okay, here we go. In India's green and pleasant land, find a field that's close at hand. Choose a cud-chewing herd of cows that has no toilet training vows. Wait until they've finished tea. Collect their dung and all their pee. Stick the cow pats in a tank. Hold your breath, 'cause it smells mank. Put a lid on firm and tight. Stir the slurry every night. Heat it up to 55 degrees until well curdled and sludgy. Whistle a time-passing sweet refrain as bacterial bugs create methane, which, as you know, is biogas your cows have made from eating. So now you've solved the mooted question, thank you, of anaerobic tank digestion. A fancy name for making fuel, not from crude oil, but from a So, entertain your friends for hours, turning poo into power. And I was thinking recently about the universe, and I saw all these facts about the universe, all thousands of galaxies there are, and planets and so on. And I thought, if that's what the scientists say and the cosmologists say about the millions of planets out there, there must be somewhere, statistically, in the universe, a planet that is made out of poo. Yeah? There's got to be one somewhere. Got to be one somewhere. And if it exists, it will be called Planet Poo. This poem is called Planet Poo. In a far-away galaxy, in a far-away galaxy is a planet made of poo. Its bleak terrain is black and brown, with lighter patches too. It's in constellation laxivity, a distant constellation. But how the planet came to be provoked much conversation, like, whose original poo was it anyway? Some say it was a single poo that inflated as it grew. Some say that it expanded from big bangs in someone's loo. The planet's weather, gusty winds with showers of yellow rain, which the alien poo peeps process for the sewage in their drains. The slippery, sludgy mess they make provides the planet's power. Their one-stop energy advice: use the toilet twice an hour. The poo peeps shovel poo each day until the end of business bell. And if the poo piles reach their armpits, they know the dig went well. And when the final mound of planet poos glistens in the setting sun, the poo peeps rest their weary heads. They're glad the day's work's done. But it is a serious subject. You know, one of the charities I work with in the UK is a charity called Frank Water. And Frank Water puts in safe, clean water and sanitation for quite a number of communities in India. And so their charity really, and their work prompted me to write this next poem. If my house had no toilet, what would I do? I promise you that this is my poetry section of poetry, okay? I promise that it's not all going to be poetry all the way through. So if my house had no toilet, what would I do? Where would I go for a pee or a poo? Out in the garden, out in the woods, or out in a field with my bum in the mud? If my school had no toilets, what would I do? Where would I fart if there weren't any loos? Out in the playground, in the school hall? Wearing a nappy would be no good at all. If my house had no taps, what would I do? How would I brew tea, boil an egg, or make stew? Where would I wash? Where would I shower? How would I water the houseplants and flowers? If my school had no taps, what would I do? How would I wash hands sticky with glue? How would I clean paint off tables and chairs, or the food from my lunchbox out of my hair? With no toilets and taps, I'd be like you, searching for somewhere to pee and to poo. I'd drink dirty water found in a river. That would upset my stomach and liver. But with toilets and taps, you'd be like me, with a great place to wash, shower, fart, poo and pee. I'd love that to happen. As it's not right or fair that my house has two loos and you have nowhere. Okay, we're going to move on to our next section now, which is my rubbish poems. And I've seen a little bit of rubbish whilst I've been in Bangalore, so I hope that these might be appropriate, because what I really want to help you with is some of your recycling. And so when you go out to put your recycling in your bins, I want to give you a handy little poem that you can say over and over again to help you sort it into the right bin and to cheer yourself up as you're doing it, so it doesn't seem like a boring task, okay? So here's the little poem for you. Blue bean, green bean, brown bean, black bean, green bean, blue bean, black bean, brown bean, black bean, brown bean, green bean, blue bean, brown bean, black bean, blue bean, green bean. Okay? It's a tongue twister, folks, so we're going to try it together, okay? After 3, 1, 2, 3. Blue bean, green bean, brown bean, black bean, green bean, blue bean, black bean, brown bean, black bean, brown bean, green bean, blue bean, brown bean, black bean, blue bean, green bean. That was pretty good. That was pretty good, I thought. What we're going to do now is we're going to put up the bin twister twisted. So this time, it's going to neurally challenge some of you. So a small proportion of you will be able to do it no trouble at all, and probably the rest of you will have some trouble with it, because all the colors of the text have been changed. Okay? So the blue bin is actually in black text, and the green bin in brown, and so on. So here we go. Come along in if you're coming in. So here we go, after 3, 1, 2, 3. Blue bin, green bin, brown bin, black bin, green bin, blue bin, black bin, brown bin, black bin, brown bin, green bin, blue bin, brown bin, black bin, blue bin, green bin. Was it easier? Harder? Yeah? Easier for some people. Okay, so you can find that in my second book, Verse for the Earth, if you're interested in having that as your little recycling mantra. Let's move on. Now, when I came to this festival, I thought it was going to be a literature festival. I mean, a litter-richer festival, not a literature festival. So I think I'm kind of here under false pretenses, really, because all I'm interested in is the litter. So, I don't know whether you know, but I have a doctorate, and I'm one of the UK's leading literologists. And I've traveled all over Europe looking for the rare pieces of litter. And I want to just show you some of the rare species that I've come across on my travels. The silver-ringed red-breasted Cocalius from the species Cocalius canaris. You will find this on beaches, forest glades, woodlands, city hedges as its normal habitat. Next one, please. Here's a silver-ringed red-breasted Cocalius egg. Okay? Next one. The red-collared downing one from the Canorus naturalis bearentius species. Normally found in hedgerows or at the side of roads. This one found in Poland. Next one. The common black-capped Botellus. Anybody seen one of those? Likes to nest near rivers, lakelands, marshes, beaches, woodland, and especially close to the water's edge. Next one. The flat-bellied pheasant from Transparentia Botellus. Anyone seen one of those? Okay, next one. The common brown jar. Oh, it's such a beautiful specimen. The common brown jar. Found it in country lanes, hedgerows, fields and beaches. Often found nesting in cars and flies through the air, splintering into beautiful feathered shards. Next one. The green-crested gluglark. Sometimes you might have heard it because it actually hides itself really well in terms of its camouflage. But you might sometimes hear this sound. Glug, 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 glug. And then you know that's what it is. It's the green-crested gluglark. Next one. The green corkchamp, often found on beaches. This one I found in Portugal from the Bublius species. And the next one. The blue-necked downhatch, again from the green Botellus transparentia. This one basking in the sun in the south of France. The brown-crested lollywrap. What a beautiful, beautiful colouring. Next one. And here's the orange-tailed lollywrap, and here you can see this one is about to take flight. The next one. The handle-tailed bagcoot. This one, feeding, from Carrier Empticus. The next one, please. The handle-tailed bagcoot, this time displaying, of course. This is an example of its courtship dance. The zipper-throated black boot from the species Helantoius fashionistas. And this species is not often found in pairs. The cup catch from the Caposius transparentia, and the next one. And here's a cup catch with the wingspan displaying, and mating cup catches. Here's the little lesser spotted ringed plate, and the next one. The white-faced paper hank from Hankypankerus hankypankerus. The blue-bellied crisppack, no doubt you've seen many of those. Also found no stranger to urban environments too. And one of my favorites, the family of white-tailed, long-trailed toilet papias. This family on the move, as you can see. The pink-billed spooner. The red-bellied tub hen, this one a juvenile. Next one. Here's an adult red-bellied tub hen. And here's one nesting. And finally here we got a collection of green cork-champ and short-necked bluebots and the cup catch with their footprints as well. The next one. Okay, so now staying with the theme of litter, we're going to do a rap together. Okay, so I know you want to all learn some rap vocabulary, don't you? So here we go. Let me show you the first slide. This is what we're going to do. These are a lot of the words that are used in rap, okay? So a berry is a police car. Bling bling is jewelry. Break to make means move quickly. Bugging means act in word. Bust this means listen to this. Buck 50 means a fast getaway. Benz is Mercedes-Benz. Can you dig it means can you understand. Cats are people. And the next one. A cut is a music track. A dap is a high five. A dissing is to disrespect. A drop is a convertible car. Dudes are a group of people. A dukey rope is a thick gold chain. Flamboasting means boasting. A 5-0 is a police car. And a flaker is an unreliable person. Next one. A fly means attractive. A freestyle is to improvise a rhyme. A front is a false impression. A gas face is a stupid look. A hawk is to look at something. A hop on the side is to get in a car. And info deep is 4 people inside the car. A jam is music. A lab is a recording studio. Lunching means behaving erratically. An MC is a master of ceremonies. A fat is a good rap attitude. Popo is police. Sketchy is shady. Stunner is wealthy person. And a swerver is a car. Next one. So, what's going to happen in this poem is I'm going to tell you the story about somebody who throws litter away. And when the words come up in red, those are your words, okay? So I want you to try out this line. Tapping out the jam with the fingertips. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. Tapping out the jam with the fingertips. Okay, that's your first line. Next one. I will say, other hands in a box of candy treats, and you'll say, popping chalk drops to the eat me beat. Okay? Popping chalk drops to the eat me beat. That's your next line. Next one. Flamboasting flaker, not using his bean, not using his brain. 5-0 swerver, still chasing his ride, pulls the Benz overs, hops on the sides. Woo! Checks out the peeps on the litter bugging trip. Don't take the gas face, the front, or the dap. Give the boys their own slamming popo rap. You cats are played out and lunching around. What's with all the rapper trash lying on the ground? Pull up your sagging pants, hanging off your bum, heavy with chalk bars, choose mince gums. Why are you dudes so rapper dumb? Pick 'em all up or the crew gets booked. Rhyme that one at the lab on your next track cut. Okay, so that's your bit of rap, you see. Okay, let's move on. So, green teen stuff, has anybody got? The book awards are intent 1. Yeah. Is that what I'm supposed to, is that a commercial break or something? Oh, it's only for me to know. I'm getting secret messages now. If you could dispense with the emails, I'll tell you what, if you don't send me any emails or WhatsApp, just come into the tent with those cards, okay? Yeah, that's great. Okay, so, anybody got any teenagers at home? Anybody got any green teenagers at home? Green teen. I'm the greenest teenager, I know. I green polish the nails on my toes. In the loos at lunchtime, I spray tan my skin lime. And there's plenty of green up my nose. My eyelashes are olive and fake, and I wear my jade earrings at break. My fluorescent extensions got me in detention. How much can a greenager take? What am I expected to do if the school uniform's blue? Guess they'll send home a letter that my green sweater isn't the regular hue. Why on earth shouldn't I show my personal take on eco? Don't they get what I mean by being green? I'm the greenest teenager I know. Okay, more green stuff for you now. Just moving on. Friends. Anybody here got any friends? There's some people here that haven't got any. I don't know what to say to you guys. My little therapy booth is just around the back of the tent for afterwards. Okay, friends. You know what? Friends come in every different shape and size, with different noses, lips, and eyes. Some are muscly, some are thin, some have different colored skins. Some dress in what you might not wear. Some hide or decorate their hair. Some are boring. Some are freaky. Some are sporty. Some are geeky. Friends are rich and friends are poor. Some want more and more and more. Some are pleased with what they've got. Some are born with such a lot. Friends walk off or hang around. Some are lost, some are found. Some are old and some are new. Some will want to stay with you. Friends embarrass you as well. Some might moan, some might smell. Some might pick their nose and shout, "This is where my snot comes out." But friends can show emotions too when they're down and feeling blue. You'll have to go the extra mile to cheer them up and make them smile. But friends can also call you names and turn on you to take the blame. That can drive you round the bend. They're the fiends amongst your friends. Friends have opposing points of view. Some think the opposite to you. Some will argue, some will fuss, some will sit down and discuss. Friends can be false and can be true. Avoid the ones that lie to you. Yeah? Don't choose those that cause you strife. They won't be your friends for life. Some friends' love can turn to hate when they fall out with a mate. Some friends forgive, some friends don't. Some come back, some just won't. Some friends are bothered. Some don't care about Earth's land and sea and air. Some friends don't want wars to cease. Some friends search for ways to peace. So, whether friends are good or bad, is there comfort to be had that friends in our society come in such an odd variety? Thank you. Does anybody here like shopping? Okay, this one is especially for you because I expect you like shopping for lots of things and that you've got lots of things. So this is called What You've Got. What You've Got. You could go out and buy a lot at a megastore or shop from a site on the net or a magazine you get. I've no idea what you choose amongst the items you'd peruse. You might check out Computer games, something trendy for your room, slim laptop with the latest spec, a gadget here, a gadget there, 3 outfits you might like to wear, perhaps a pair of running shoes, a smartphone, skateboard or a bike, loads of music that you like, attractive junk in gorgeous tat, a plastic this, a plastic that, worn as a trinket or a fad, something that will entertain, gold or silver on a chain. Of course it's cool to buy brand new and go for many, not for few. Then dash back to the next department store and purchase more from every floor. You certainly must buy a bag to carry all the stuff you have. And when you've left the shopping zone with all your money quickly blown and all you've bought is now back home, sit and chill with all you own. You could go out and buy a lot, or you could stick with what you've got. It was my birthday yesterday. Is that it? Woo! Woo! It was my birthday yesterday. Yeah, exactly, it's better. But one of the gifts, I have to say, was not my style, or type, or thing. But left in its original wrapping, I gave it to my best friend Sue for her dinner party do. I didn't know she didn't like, and that she gifted it to Mike, who had one similar at home, so passed it on to mate Jerome, who gave it not a second look because it was not a comic book, but a leaving present it would make for a party round at Jake's. But the design and colour didn't thrill, so Jake awarded it to Jill as a prize in a quiz game, but her opinion was the same. She took it round to neighbour Trace. Here's something for your brand new place. But Trace had got another plan. She passed it on to Sister Fran. And that was me. Suffice to say, I got it back on Christmas Day. It must have saved folks lots of pounds doing the regifting rounds. And what about fashion? Anybody like fashion here? Come on, admit it. Yeah, you're all buying the labels. Come on. Check out your trainers, I know. Check out your underpants, I know. So, fashion ration. My wardrobe is bursted, the shelves crammed and bulging, drawers chock full to the brim. Oh, I wish I could ration my passion for fashion, but I love wearing stuff that is in. Most of the gear on the hangers in here are saris that have hardly been worn. Outfits get demoted when they're not noted, when I'm out dancing till dawn. I don't give a thought to the last dress I bought. It looks good on display in the store. It's no longer chic, got worn for a week, and the colorway's now such a bore. I've got 50 pairs of shoes I don't wear, piled on a heap on the floor. The heels I wore twice, the platform's too high, and the stilettos give blisters and sores. Mind you, trainers were great, but now they get hate, since the logo's design got an update. I really must ration this passion for fashion, but I love wearing labels I rate. I could customize my jeans from full size and cut off the legs to make shorts. I could rip and edge fray the denim away and add a front flap for a skirt. I could wear a classic transseasonal jacket and wear it from autumn to spring. I could not wash my clothes on daily half loads and expand the life of my things. Instead of buy new, I could mend and make do. Why be a cool fashionista? I could charity shop for all of my tops and become a recessionista. My wardrobe is bulging, the drawers crammed and bursted, drawers chock full to the brim. I really must ration this passion for fashion, but I love wearing stuff that is in. Okay, next section, green, endangered, okay? Endangered animals or endangered parts of our environment, okay? Now, in the UK, we've got a big problem with hedgehogs. You know, little spiky animals, little spiky hedgehogs, prickly hedgehogs. They are only going to stay with us in the UK for maybe 20 years now because we're building garages, we're building carports, we're concreting our drives, we're putting up big fences so they can't travel and they can't build their nests. They're losing the hedgerows. So this is called living on the edge hog. Living on the edge hog. I'm living on the edge. I'm on the edge hog, looking for a home in a random pile of logs. And where's the hedge gone that was once around this field? I used to go hang out there for an insect snack or meal. And what about the garden that used to be my nest? It's now garages and carports. I'm so not impressed. All I get to do round here is roll into a ball. I'd roll away from everything. I can't take it all since my dad's a 2D hedgehog, squashed by a 4x4. My mum, she ate a poison slug and now she is no more. My brother found his way back home, fenced off by wood and wire. My sister's place is ashes now, gone in a garden fire. My uncle, he's flat meat. My aunt, a tarmac stain. My cousin's on the concrete. My mate drowned in a drain. And me, I'm on the precipice. I'm living on the line. It's like living on a tightrope. I'm running out of time. I know I seem quite spiky, but I'm spiked up with emotion. We'll all be gone in 20 years without some hog devotion. I'm a nervy, edgy hedgehog living on the edge. I'm an on-the-edge hog who'd be better in a hedge. Well, one of my friends went to China recently and visited a city that was growing from just kind of thousands when he last visited it into millions now. And he was struck by the fact that everybody had mahogany tables in their homes and said to me, just imagine the number of people and imagine the number of mahoganies that has had to be cut down for those tables. The case of the murdered mahogany. A forest glade with shade and moss. A patrol car pulls up at the spot. The detective gets out from the rear, surveys the site. What have we here? The crime scene was securely fenced, protecting any evidence the suspect might have left behind for a super sleuth to find. The investigator caught his breath. Such a tragic eco-death. He stared at what was once a tree, another murdered mahogany. The coroner took a look around, gave her reports on what she found. Sawn to a stump, life sap gone. She announced, tree dead at 5:01. This is murder in the first degree of another defenseless mahogany. Shown no mercy, that's a fact, and couldn't flee the criminal's act. The forensic crew was standing by with cameras and beady eyes, dressed in latex gloves and suits. They searched the ground and traced the roots. We found stray branches stripped and hacked. The weapons used, chainsaws and axe. Tracks show the trunk was hauled through mud. Here's where they loaded up the wood. This tree was just another number, slaughtered for its precious lumber, illegally sold for dirty money, the once stood proud mahogany. The detective took a note or two. A mahogicide. It's up to you. Follow every lead and print and clue. Find the trail to why and who. I'm sure that those who did this crime will return another time. It won't be long before we'll see another murdered mahogany. And what about you tigers, folks? What about you tigers? Because, you know, there are only, what, 3,500, 4,000 tigers left in the world. But, I mean, what's good, of course, is we've got some of these captive breeding schemes now, and these parks which have got breeding schemes. So that's fantastic for the children here. So in about 20 years' time, hopefully, children, there'll be many more tigers on the streets of Bangalore, okay? That'll be cool, won't it? So, tiger, tiger. Tiger, tiger, where are you? Lying low or lost from view? Faint ghostly stripes flash through the night. Black gold, black gold, black gold, white. Tiger, tiger, once burnt bright in poems and forests of the night, where tracks and paths felt pad of paw. Now there's no marker of your claw. Tiger, tiger's jeweled eyes meet hunters' guns. That's no surprise, for your fur, your bones, your skin are hunted for weird medicine. Tiger, tiger, torn apart, they've taken what was once your heart, that which made you stalk and stride in the forests of the wild. Tiger, tiger, where are you, one of the black and golden few? Your burning colors of the night have been switched off like a light. Tiger, tiger, it's insane. 3,000 big cats now remain. A one of black and golden hue. Where will you hide? What will you do? Tiger, tiger, burning bright, gone from forests of the night. Who will listen to your plight? Tiger, tiger, out of sight. And it's not just the tigers, because what we need to respect really is all the animals that are under threat at the moment, and ask ourselves the question, whose place is it anyway? Whose place is it anyway? The golden mole is threatened by the workings of a mine. The pine marten and polecat live on borrowed time. Hippos cannot hide from illegal traders' guns. Do the cheetahs of Botswana watch their last setting suns? As Arctic ice dissolves and polar bears decline, will the wolves of Ethiopia trust humankind? Will the white-tipped shark and angel shark avoid the fishing trawl? How soon until the apingo tree makes its final fall? The manta ray is troubled by pollution in the water, while cats of the Andes scarper from a slaughter. Will the jaguar outrun the hunter's cold pursuit? Can we save our ponds for the great crested newt? Will snakes find their lairs as habitat turns to road? Does a parking lot come first, or the Puerto Rican toad? Will koalas in their hollows avoid the ruthless logging? Shall we bother to find out? Or is that just too much slogging? Why don't we remember those with whom we share the earth? And why don't we honor and value their true worth? We wouldn't want our best friends to simply vanish without trace. So let's work together and restore their rightful place. Anyone like football? Here's a football that's been made by some of the students here, and it is made out of plastic bags. So there's probably about 50 plastic bags here. You can make one at home. Children in Africa, this is how they make their footballs to play with. So you get some paper, roll it into a ball, put it in a plastic bag, tie the handles around it tight. Keep doing that with putting extra plastic bags around it, keep tying it, and then occasionally put a little bit of string around it to hold it in place, and keep going like that until you get to that, and then just wrap some rope around it, yeah? So that's a lovely one that they've made for me to do this poem, which is called Who's Holding the Ball? The pitch was once green, pristine and green, until to the roar of the crowd from out of the tunnel came humankind's team, a frightening formation of billions of players with one aim in mind: to control the ball. The whistle was blown. The boots hit the ball, kicked it around, ripped up the turf, rolled it in dirt. The team tackled hard, one on another. Possession their tactic, keeping the ball firm at their feet where they felt it belonged. Half time. Now, imagine the world as a football in play, with the stud prints of commerce, consumption, pollution, exploitation, and greed stamped on the ball. Visible logos of overlooked fouls. When the whistle is blown at the end of the match, there'll be no extra minutes of injury time. The ball is deflated, punctured below in Antarctica's air, and further atop at the North Pole. What should we do then? What shall we do? Send for a ref? Send for David Beckham or Rio Ferdinand to penalty shoot it out into space where it might even land on a planetary world, where an alien race will pick up the ball for its football museum's soccer exhibit. And they might even label it, "This once was Earth," in a match score that ended humanity ununited, 1, Earth 0. Okay, our final poem, everyone, is an interactive one which returns to travel. My question is, can we travel around the world in 80 green ways? Can we travel around the world? Do you think we can do it? Okay, so I need you to join in where you'll find the places where you'll have to join in. So here we go, around the world in 80 ways. Think for a minute or an hour, could you travel with green power? Why not go around the earth with an idea from this verse? To sledge across the Arctic ice, construct a bobsleigh sled device. Ride Scotland's Loch Ness on your bike and the Monster, if you like. Crossing London, it's not scary, on a milk float from the dairy. Take the tube, march with a band, walk upside down on your hand. Maybe you should take a tram along the streets of Amsterdam. Got a wheelchair, now's your chance, wheelie to the south of. Hoop dance, arms, legs, hips, ankles, waist, gyrate to Switzerland with haste. Slide down glaciers on your back, ski the Alps on anoraks. Somersault on trampolines to parts of Poland you've not been to. Paddle board to sunny Spain. For Madrid, take the train. Why not take 1,000,000 ferries to wing you on to the Canaries? Then a kite surf via Gibraltar onto Algiers, bound for Malta. And with your walking boots from home, hike to Florence, Venice. Make a mobile toilet pan, flush your way to not Japan, Milan. Aladdin's magic carpet ride or a Greek god's giant stride may earn you thousands of air miles and land you on the Grecian. Jump in a fairground Dodgem car, ride round in circles where you are. See if you can find a way to scoot to Russia in a day. Think of the Olympic Games to best describe your journey aims. Pole vault to central Kazakhstan. Shot put your body to... No, not Iran or Japan. Taiwan. Build an origami ship for your Japanese sailing trip. Pump up your poolside mattress gear. Lilo float to south. Okay. From east to west won't take long. First hire a rickshaw from. With surf on planks with old bin liners. Raft the southern coast of China. Here's another travel plan. Monkey swing to... Not Japan. Who said Japan? Vietnam. Vietnam. Moonwalk, pogo, leap or hop until you end up in Bangkok. Unicycle, if you can, to the kingdom of Bhutan. Bhutan. Trot through Tibet on a yak, piggy on a Sherpa's back. Fly a broomstick to Nepal, jog to India's Taj Mahal. Take an elephant from Delhi, bolly dance Mumbai in your wellies. Go by wheelbarrow, stretcher, pram, overland to... Ah, no, not Japan. The Oman. Float on a breeze-blown bed of leaves that drops you off on the Maldives. You must balloon to Zanzibar, across the plains of Africa, sleepwalk through the Cameroon, camel ride Sahara's dunes, parkour the buildings of Dubai, free climb the ones that are sky high, inflate and fart explode your jeans, end up on the, yay, Philippines. Hover on a hurricane that sweeps you to New Zealand's plains, crawl through a pothole that might reach South Australia's Bondi. Make a bungee jump or two, land on a llama in Peru. Ballon like a ballerina, tango on to. Why not join a circus troupe? Tightrope walk to Guadeloupe. Oh, trapeze the rainforests of Brazil, clown walk, Rio's carnival. Months in a dinghy pulling oars might get you to El Salvador. Tap, skip, shuffle, and tiptoe all the way to Mexico. Want to see the coast of Cuba? Go by ghost ship, swim, or scuba. In Jamaica, take it slow. Choose a beachside pedalo. Sketch on a pavement with white chalk. All you'll sightsee in New York. Skateboard all the USA. Ollie, San Francisco Bay. Board a pterodactyl flight, stop over in LA one night, carve the waves of the Pacific on a surfboard, it's terrific. Canada is worth a view, explore the rivers in canoes, ascend the Rocky Mountain range on a moose for a change. I know it seems a little daft, but why not take an alien craft? These engines run on solar power, orbit the Earth in half an hour. Or how about a giant jumping bean to keep your travel squeaky clean? Or invent a time machine, go forwards, back, or in between. So, as you travel here and there, give a thought about our air. And for what it's really worth, travel green to save the... Hey, let's have an eco-caper. Get a pen, computer, paper, write your green journey poem today, Around the World in 90 Ways. Great green gratitude, everybody, and thank you for staying with the show. Thank you.